Chapter 3706. It was not that he did not have women who were prettier and prettier than her. There were all kinds of women around him, but Chu Ho was special. It was not just because of her identity as Xiao Bao's biological mother. She seemed to be the only woman who was willing to risk her life for him. Was he touched? He was afraid not. He was a proud man like Gu Jinglian. How could he be touched by such a ridiculous feeling and tie himself up for the rest of his life? For Xiao Bao. Similarly, he would never bet his life on a man for the sake of a child. It was only now that he understood that there was no need for a reason to like someone. Cute. Gentle. Flirtatious. She did not have any of these qualities that a woman should have. However, it still proved that there was no need for a reason to like someone. He was willing to be with her. For the rest of his life. She might have many flaws, but it did not stop him from liking her. Gu Jinglian lowered his head and gently kissed her lips. Their lips pressed together as he murmured, "If this feeling of wanting to be with you is like," then, he did not continue speaking and deepened the kiss. The answer that followed was self-evident, though. A man like him did not like to show off. Usually, such a proud man would keep everything in his heart. Chu Ho could understand, though. In his kiss, she seemed to have heard his answer. Like. If you like, then be together for the rest of your life. A lifetime was short, but it was long. Only they knew in their hearts that this choice was not for Xiao Bao but for themselves. This was also one of the reasons why Gu Jinglian did not hate Yun Tianyu for the incident in North Africa. Given his vengeful personality, that incident in North Africa would probably become an unforgettable barrier between the Gu and Mu families. However, even though he had lost Werther, he recognized his own heart. Chu Ho originally did not want to take wedding photos, but Xiao Bao insisted on it. Just as well, she could take a family photo as well. Sometimes, when the kindergarten held activities, the homeroom teacher would ask for a family photo. Xiao Bao couldn't take it out, so he could only say that he couldn't find the family photo. It just so happened that he had such an opportunity this time. Since Xiao Bao had already said so, Chu Ho had no reason to refuse. After the wedding photo shoot, Uncle Fu suddenly took out a photo of her and gave it to the Gu family tattoo artist. There were 5 tattoo artists in the Gu residence. The tattoos and totems on the bodies of the several thousand disciples of the Gu family were all handled by the tattoo artists employed by the Gu residence. The photo that Uncle Fu took away was a photo of Chu Ho wearing a traditional Chinese and phoenix robe and wearing a phoenix coronet. The tattoo artist took it and designed a heavy-colored tattoo. Chu Ho did not know about this. However, a few days later, Chu Ho finally found something fishy about Gu Jinglian. He had an additional tattoo on his body. That night, when she entered the room, she happened to see Gu Jinglian changing into a bathrobe. She vaguely noticed a strange mark on his left chest. She took the chance when he was not paying attention and lifted his bathrobe, only to see her face. What is this? Gu Jinglian waved her hand away with an unnatural expression. It's nothing. I saw it. Chu Ho frowned. That's my face. Chapter 3707. She held up a fan and covered half of her face, revealing only her eyes. The tassels of the phoenix coronet dangled from her hair. After the tattoo artist's design, it was made into a multicolored tattoo on his chest. Similarly, it was the position of his heart. Chu Ho was stunned. He got a tattoo. How did he get a tattoo? And it was her portrait. Chu Ho was so curious that she wanted to tug at his bathrobe. Let me see. Gu Jinglian slapped her hand away. No. Let me see. It's my portrait after all. Don't I have the right to see it? Gu Jinglian said awkwardly, No, you don't have the right. Chu He was displeased. In one go, she grabbed Gu Jinglian's collar and threw him onto the bed. She straddled him and pinned his hands down with the back of her hand. In an instant, she tore open the bathrobe. When she saw the totem tattooed on his chest, she was stunned. Chu Ho furrowed her eyebrows. What does this mean? Nothing. You wouldn't get this tattoo for no reason, right? Chu Ho smiled and asked, do you also think that this photo of mine looks especially good? Shut up. Or do you want to engrave my most beautiful image in your heart forever? Shut up. You've got a tattoo but you don't let me talk about it. How awkward are you? Shut up. Gu Jinglian, I didn't expect you to love me so much. Shut up. Outside the door, Uncle Fu happened to pass by and overheard their bickering. He couldn't help but laugh. Actually, the reason why he had asked the digitizer for this wedding photo that day was because of Gu Jinglian's instructions. That day, the wedding photo was printed on the spot. Gu Jinglian saw this photo and didn't say anything. He asked Uncle Fu to print out this photo and take it to the Gu family's tattoo artist for a design. Uncle Fu asked him what he wanted to do. Gu Jinglian only asked him to do as he was told, but did not say anything else. How could Uncle Fu not understand? He immediately understood. The old master wanted to tattoo his wife on his body. Gu Jinglian did not have many tattoos on his body, but this one covered his entire chest. There was no extra space. On the left side of his chest, in the center of his precordium. This was also the position of the heart, the most sacred position. He got a tattoo of her. What did this mean? Uncle Fu felt gratified when he saw this. This showed that old master really cared about Chu Ho. He was too happy. She was happier than anyone else. To be able to see his master's happiness while he was still alive, his greatest wish in this life could be considered to have been fulfilled. However, how could someone as arrogant as Gu Jinglian tell Chu Ho his intentions? It would be hard for him to say such embarrassing words for the rest of his life. No matter how Chu Ho asked, he couldn't get an answer. By chance, Xiao Bao also discovered this tattoo. He recognized at a glance that it was a portrait of Chu Ho. He didn't say anything. He returned to his room and started to flip through his photo album. Finally, he found an especially cute photo. Xiao Bao held the photo up and ran to Gu Jinglian. He gestured with the photo on his right chest. Gu Jinglian lifted his collar and asked unhappily, "What are you doing?" "Dad, look. How about you tattoo me here?" Xiao Bao showed the photo to him as he poked his right chest. "Get lost." Gu Jinglian didn't even think and threw him aside. Xiao Bao felt indignant when he heard this. Chapter 3708. No reason. Xiao Bao said angrily, "You only tattooed mommy, not me." "Why?" Gu Jinglian snorted coldly. "Nothing. You're ugly." Whoosh. It was a blow to the heart. Xiao Bao's glass heart was shattered into pieces. He held his heart and asked pitifully, "You said I'm ugly." Xiao Bao knelt on the floor, covering his mouth with his fist and acting like a resentful wife. "You said I'm ugly." Daddy is biased. Gu Jinglian was speechless. Was this guy an actor? Why was he so dramatic? He said coldly, "Gu Chengza, you'd better know when to stop." Xiao Bao burst into tears. Daddy doesn't love me. Daddy doesn't love me. Daddy only tattooed mommy, not me. Daddy is so biased, so biased. Gu Jinglian wanted to kick him out of the door. He said, "Why are you acting like a resentful wife?" His acting skills were top-notch. Everyone knew that he was pretending. He cried for a long time, but there were no tears. Xiao Bao asked anxiously, "Daddy, tell me the truth, do you really think that your son is ugly?" Gu Jinglian hummed in acknowledgement. Baby Chu covered his face and ran away with a wah sound. He ran all the way to Chu Ho's room and complained to her pitifully. Chu Ho was confused when she heard that. But when she saw Xiao Bao's funny look, she couldn't help but laugh. "Daddy is jealous that you're cute." "Humph. That must be it." Xiao Bao crossed his arms and nodded solemnly. "Daddy must be jealous that I'm cute. That's why he said that. He's purposely making me angry." However, he said longingly, but Xiao Bao also wants daddy to tattoo me. What's so good about it? It just feels, Xiao Bao thought about it seriously. It just feels special. Chu Ho teased him, then mommy will tattoo you on my heart, okay? Alright. Chu Ho wasn't just teasing him. So, he took the photo in Xiao Bao's hand and found a tattoo artist. He asked him to design a design. Uncle Fu found out about it and told Gu Jinglian about it. Gu Jinglian was furious. No tattoos allowed. That night, when Chu He had just entered the room, Gu Jinglian saw her sitting at the desk and said this out of the blue. Huh? For a moment, Chu Ho did not understand what he was trying to say. He was confused. What do you mean by not allowed? What's not allowed? I heard that you want to tattoo Xiao Bao's picture on your body. Chu Ho was suddenly enlightened. Oh, you're talking about that? She nodded. I do have that thought. You are not allowed to. Why? This man was too domineering. Only the officials were allowed to set fires, but not the common people. You already have a tattoo, so why can't I have one? Gu Jinglian frowned but did not say anything. But in reality, he didn't want Chu Ho to have anything that was not harmonious. What if he saw Xiao Bao's picture tattooed on her body when they were in bed? That would be a very scary feeling. He kept feeling as if a pair of eyes were staring at him. He was not interested anymore. Moreover, her skin was so fair and smooth. If he had a tattoo on her body, it would ruin her beauty. If I say no, then no. You're not allowed to get a tattoo. Chu Ho said, I promised Xiao Bao and the child, so I have to keep my word. Besides, you already have a tattoo, so it's not a big deal for me to get one. You can get one. Chapter 3709. Make the tattoo smaller. Tattoo it on your butt. Xiao Bao would be so angry that he would cry, wouldn't he? How could he do such a thing to his son? Chu Ho could totally imagine how pitiful Xiao Bao would be when he found out that his portrait was tattooed on his butt. Mom, I'm on your butt, and you're sitting on me every day. Sob, 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 Xiao Bao feels so wronged, no way. Chu Ho immediately interrupted him. Gu Jinglian replied, why not? You tattoo me on your chest, and I tattoo Xiao Bao on my butt. Isn't the difference in treatment too big? Gu Jinglian sat down at the table and snorted coldly. Why should I tattoo him on your body? I won't allow it. You're so overbearing. You only know that I'm overbearing on the first day you met me. In Gu Jinglian's mind, he got the tattoo only because he liked that photo. Given his style of doing things, to him, having a portrait tattooed on his chest had a special meaning. Of course, he wouldn't agree to Xiao Bao's whim. Chu Ho was helpless. If Gu Jinglian didn't agree and he didn't say anything, the Gu family's tattoo artist wouldn't tattoo him. Thinking of this, he could only give up. When Chu Ho went back, Xiao Bao looked at her expectantly. However, she said helplessly, your dad didn't allow it. Why? Your dad said that it's okay to tattoo it, but it has to be on your butt. Xiao Bao was speechless. He frowned and asked suspiciously, what? He said that if you want to tattoo it, it can only be on your butt. Xiao Bao clutched his chest. What? How can he be so heartless? Good boy. Chu Ho smiled and squatted down. She patted his head and said patiently, actually, a tattoo is very painful. You don't want your mom to be in pain because of a tattoo, right? Xiao Bao listened and nodded, but he felt a little awkward in his heart. Actually, it wasn't a big deal if Chu Ho didn't get a tattoo. The problem was that Gu Jinglian actually said that he wanted to tattoo him on his butt. Bullshit. Boom. Charge. How infuriating. But in front of Chu Ho, she still had to maintain a smile. Xiao Bao clenched his fists, feeling indignant. He suddenly thought of something, and his eyes flashed as he chuckled. In the past few days, Xiao Bao had been well behaved. On this day of rest, Xiaobao suddenly ran to Gu Jinglian's study in the evening. Gu Jinglian had just returned from the company. He dialed a number and explained some of the wedding procedures. After hanging up the phone, he looked up and saw Xiaobao standing at the door of the room, wearing a bathrobe. However, the way he looked at him was a little malicious. "Daddy." Gu Jinglian's eyebrows twitched. He did not know what this little guy was up to. "What are you doing?" "I got a tattoo." Xiaobao flipped his hair proudly and swayed his hips as he walked in front of him. He placed his little hands on the table, looking very pleased with himself. Gu Jinglian said, "Oh," but did not seem to be moved. "What does it have to do with me?" "Of course it has to do with you." Xiaobao held his chest and pretended to put on a flattering expression. "In order to express my deep love for Daddy, I drew Daddy's picture and tattooed it on my butt." Deep love? His picture? Tattooed on his butt? Gu Jinglian was speechless. "What? How is it?" Chapter 37:10. Xiaobao's eyebrows twitched. "Look at how good I am to Dad." As he said this, he took half a step back and pulled his bathrobe open. He turned around and stuck out his back, revealing his round and bouncy little butt. Gu Jinglian followed his gaze and saw that there was really a tattoo of his portrait on his butt. "You." "Hee hee. Dad, if I make Dad angry in the future, you don't have to do it yourself. I'll just slap my own butt." As Baby Chu spoke, he slapped himself hard on the buttocks. As he slapped himself hard, his buttocks shook. On top of him, Gu Jinglian's face instantly turned red. At first glance, this slap seemed to have landed on his face. Gu Jinglian's face darkened at once. "You'd better behave yourself." "Dad, you're angry." Xiaobao smirked. "Then I'll slap my own butt 10 times. As he spoke, he began to spank himself hard on the buttocks with a few pa sounds. However, this scene was too glaring to look at. It was as if all these slaps had landed on his face. Gu Jinglian suddenly got up and walked towards Xiaobao aggressively. "Gu Chengza." Xiaobao turned around and saw his expression. He immediately realized that Gu Jinglian was really angry. He didn't even have time to put on his bathrobe and ran out of the door in a panic. "Wow! Murder!" Gu Jinglian also quickly chased after him. In the long corridor, a few servants passed by and saw the naked little munchkin running down the long corridor like a madman. Running naked. Behind him, Gu Jinglian chased after him with big strides. Like a gust of wind, he lifted Xiaobao up in an instant. "Wow! Shut up! Don't hit me!" Bam, bam. 2 unambiguous slaps. "You like to hit your own butt so much?" Gu Jinglian asked as he ravaged his hair. "Then do you mind if I do it for you?" Gu Jinglian didn't wait for Xiaobao to finish his sentence before he started spanking him. Xiaobao cried out in pain, his eyes brimming with tears. When Chuhi returned to the room, she saw Gu Jinglian sitting elegantly on the sofa with his legs crossed and a cold expression on his face. Baby Chu, on the other hand, was kneeling on the sofa. More than half of his buttocks were swollen, and more than half of the painting on his buttocks had been knocked off. When Xiaobao took the photo and was about to get a tattoo, the tattoo artist who was holding the photo didn't dare to really inscribe it. After all, she was still a child, and her words carried no harm. If old master knew about this, he would definitely be in big trouble, right? Therefore, even though it was said to be tattooed, it was actually just a drawing that was imprinted on it. How would they dare to really tattoo it? Gu Jinglian could tell at a glance that this was only the first step of the tattoo process. After printing it and imprinting it on her butt, the next step was to move the needle. Once it was done, it was done. Xiaobao rubbed his eyes and sobbed. Gu Jinglian put on a shirt for him. He wore a pair of underwear, but his butt was still exposed. When he saw Chu Ho, he cried even harder. He reached out his little arms and asked for a hug. Chu Ho had just walked over when Gu Jinglian snorted coldly. "No hugging." "What's wrong?" Chu Ho ignored him and walked over to Xiao Bao's side and picked him up. Xiao Bao, don't cry. Mom, my butt is swollen. Chapter 37:11. The wedding date was getting closer and closer. The entire Gu family was in a state of anxiety. No one dared to be negligent. If there were any accidents at the wedding, none of them would be able to escape punishment if Gu Jinglian decided to punish them. There were only 10 days left until the wedding. However, an accident caught everyone off guard. Chu Ho had a suspected pregnancy reaction. No one had expected this to happen. She suspected that her pregnancy was not a problem of delayed menstruation. Although Chu Ho was not busy preparing for the wedding during this period, as a bride-to-be, she had a lot of things to prepare. She had forgotten that her menstruation period had not arrived yet. Until one day, when she woke up, she felt particularly uncomfortable. She had been extremely tired for the past few days. No matter how much she slept, she could not wake up. At dinner, at first, he just didn't have an appetite. Later on, the situation became worse. Greasy food, especially pork belly, braised pork, and chicken drumsticks, was only inedible at first. Once she ate it, she would feel very uncomfortable. However, gradually, the symptoms became more and more serious. She could not see it, she could not hear it, and she would vomit when she heard it. She did not realize that she was pregnant. Later, when she passed by the kitchen and heard the sound of cooking, she threw herself at the flower bed and retched for a while. When Auntie Chin, who was passing by, saw this, she immediately walked over and asked suspiciously, "Don't tell me you're pregnant." "Pregnant? Ayo, it means pregnant." As Auntie Chin spoke, her face flushed red. She asked vaguely, "Recently, have you and Master Gu?" Cough, cough, cough. "Do you have that?" She did not say it explicitly, but it was self-evident. Chu Ho narrowed her eyes suspiciously. It was not that they had not. After returning from North Africa, they had had sex a few times. However, they had taken contraceptive measures. Not a single time had been missed. In fact, Chu Ho did not want to have children. She was not sure about Gu Jinglian's attitude. However, when it came to children, Gu Jinglian would not force it. He would let nature take its course. She had only done it twice in North Africa, and she had also taken the medicine. How could she have gotten pregnant? But now, all the symptoms seemed to be similar to pregnancy. So, Chu Ho went to the pharmacy to buy a pregnancy test kit. He planned to test it first. Early in the morning, after Gu Jinglian left the room, Chu Ho sneakily took the pregnancy test kit into the bathroom and did as Mama Chin instructed. When he came out of the bathroom, Chu Ho's brows were tightly knitted. This matter was a little too mysterious. How could this be? What if she got pregnant? When Chu Ho came down from his room, Mother Chin saw him and immediately went up to him. She asked curiously, "How was it? Do you have any?" Chu Ho looked at her with a complicated gaze and nodded gently. Great." Seeing this, Mother Chin's face glowed. "Does Master Gu know about this too?" "He doesn't know yet." "Then I'll hurry and tell him." "Don't. He left early in the morning. There's no hurry to tell him." Chapter 37:12. Now that Xiao Bao has a little brother and a little sister, if we tell Master Gu and Xiao Bao about this, they will definitely be overjoyed. But, Chu Ho said with some hesitation, "I don't intend to have another child." "Why?" "I think that having Xiao Bao and Lin Shi is enough. If we have another child, Xiao Bao may not be happy." She already felt that 2 sons were enough. If she had another child, it would be fine if it was a daughter, but if it was a son, the 3 of them would definitely cause a ruckus. Ever since Lin Shi had returned to the Gu family, it had been more than a month. It had not been easy for him to get used to everything in the Gu family, but in the end, everything had changed. Xiao Bao and Lin Shi were both boys. Lin Shi used to be quite quiet, but after meeting a clown like Xiao Bao, his personality had changed and he had become a little mischievous. No, Not a little mischievous, but very mischievous. If they had another son, the three boys would definitely overturn the Gu family. Mother Qin laughed when she heard this. How is that possible? No matter how mischievous the three children are, how could they possibly overturn such a big house? It's hard to say. Master Gu was very mischievous when he was young, but I didn't see him overturn the Gu family's house. You don't have to worry about this matter. First of all, it depends on whether you want to keep this child or not. Chu Ho smiled and said, of course I can't bear to get rid of my own child. Of course I want to keep it. Although she did not want to keep it, since she had it, it was fate. Then isn't it settled? Since you have decided to keep it, then be happy. When Chu Ho heard this, the knot in his heart also disappeared. Mother Qin told Uncle Fu about this matter. When Uncle Fu first heard this, he was still a little doubtful, until Mother Qin said that they had already tested it with a pregnancy test kit. In order to confirm it, Master Gu would bring Chu Ho to the hospital for an ultrasound. Then, they would be able to confirm it. When Uncle Fu heard this, he was so excited that he called Gu Jinglian to report this matter, despite Mother Qin's attempts to stop him. On the other end, Gu Jinglian was still in a meeting. As soon as he heard about this, he lost interest in the meeting and hurried back. Chu Ho was still in the room. She did not know why, but she was always tired and weak. When Gu Jinglian pushed the door open, she was taking an afternoon nap. When she heard the sound of the door opening, she immediately sat up in bed. When she saw that it was him, she subconsciously looked at the sky outside the window. It was still afternoon. Why are you back so early? Gu Jinglian walked to the bed with a serious expression and asked in a low voice, are you really pregnant? So it was because of this matter. Apparently, Uncle Fu and Aunt Qin couldn't wait to tell him about this. Chu Ho said, I'm not sure yet. I just tested it with a pregnancy test kit. Gu Jinglian immediately said, get up and get dressed. Go to the hospital now and do a checkup. Do we go now? Chu Ho's lips twitched. Is there a need to be in such a hurry? On the other hand, Gu Jinglian couldn't wait any longer. However, with his personality, he was naturally embarrassed to say it out loud. Hence, he deliberately acted as if he wasn't looking forward to it. The pregnancy test kit is not accurate. We have to go to the hospital for a checkup to get a definite result. Chu Ho also agreed. She rolled out of bed and prepared to get dressed. When she got out of bed, Gu Jinglian actually went up to her personally and supported her. Chu Ho was even more speechless. Chapter 37:13. I'm just pregnant, I'm not a paraplegic. I know. Gu Jinglian, yes. Let me ask you a very serious question. Speak. Do you like boys or girls? Gu Jinglian hesitated for a moment. Based on his personality, he actually preferred girls. Actually, even if he didn't say it, Chu Ho could tell. Looking at how he usually despised Xiao Bao, when Little Ro came to the house and he saw Little Ro, he revealed a rare smile. It was obvious that he actually liked daughters very much. Chu Ho could even imagine that if she gave birth to a daughter, when she was 5 years old, Gu Jinglian would definitely give his daughter's photo to a tattoo artist and tattoo her on his right chest. Xiao Bao would probably feel all kinds of psychological imbalance when he saw that. Gu Jinglian said, it's the same whether it's a boy or a girl. I don't care. Really? What if I give birth to a son like Xiao Bao? Will you like him too? Gu Jinglian's eyes turned pale, but he said, it's fine. It's fine. If Xiao Bao was present and heard these words, he would definitely be so sad that he would cry and snot. Gu Jinglian put his coat on her. For some reason, after finding out that she was pregnant, Gu Jinglian was especially gentle to her, so much so that Chu Ho couldn't get used to it. You don't have to be so careful. It's just pregnancy. When I was pregnant with Xiao Bao, I was still building a house. No wonder Xiao Bao is so stupid. You'd better not let Xiao Bao hear this. When Gu Jinglian brought Chu Ho to the hospital, they went straight to the VIP passage and did a series of tests. After a urine test, the nurse asked them to do an ultrasound. After the ultrasound, they were surprised to find that Chu Ho was not only pregnant, but she had been pregnant for more than 3 months. Gu Jinglian and Chu Ho were very surprised when they heard the results. After all, she had been pregnant for more than 3 months, but her belly did not show at all. Her lower abdomen was still as flat as before, and there was no sign of pregnancy at all. If she hadn't had some pregnancy symptoms recently, she wouldn't have thought that she was pregnant. The doctor was still a little speechless. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he said, "You're more than 3 months pregnant. Are there any abnormalities during your menstrual period recently?" "I've been quite busy recently, so I didn't pay much attention to it. Moreover, I've taken better contraceptive measures, so I didn't think about it." "Do you always take contraceptive measures?" "Yes." The doctor glanced meaningfully at Gu Jinglian, who was standing by the bed, and said meaningfully, "If the man is stronger in that aspect, no matter how many contraceptives are used, there is still a possibility of pregnancy. I know a pregnant woman. Not only did she take medicine, but she also wore a condom. In the end, she fell for it. Fortunately, the fetus was very healthy." As he spoke, the doctor looked at the screen and exclaimed, "Eh? What happened? Wait a moment. Let me take a closer look." The doctor took a tool and rolled it around her belly. He said in surprise, "Ah, it seems like there's more than one." "More than one?" Gu Jinglian raised his eyebrows. "What do you mean?" The doctor looked at the screen seriously and then smiled as he congratulated, "Congratulations, it's a pair of twins. How rare, how rare. The first pair of twins this year." Twins. Gu Jinglian and Chu Ho looked at each other and also found it strange. A boy and a girl. Yes. Chapter 37:14. Fraternal twins. A boy and a girl. Chu He, on the other hand, found it strange. "How can you tell? Fraternal twins are twins. We can tell from the ultrasound. However, the probability of this is very small. There are only 1 to 5 in 100 people. It's a very small probability." Gu Jinglian was stunned. The doctor saw his reaction and thought that something was wrong. He was a little nervous. "What's wrong? Are you unhappy that your wife is pregnant with twins?" Gu Jinglian came back to his senses and glanced at the doctor. Then, he glanced at Chu Ho beside him. There was a strange light in his eyes. His gaze fell on Chu Ho's belly, which was still as flat as before. His eyes flickered. It was a surprise. It was too sudden. The sudden appearance of a pair of twins left him a little dumbfounded. How could he not be happy? However, given Gu Jinglian's character, who had never been good at expressing his emotions, it was very difficult for him to express his happiness. However, even though he appeared to be calmer, Chu Ho still noticed that his fingertips were trembling slightly. He was excited. Although he still maintained his usual calm expression, his trembling fingertips revealed that he was a little excited. When they left the consultation room, Chu Ho was carrying a bag in his hand. Gu Jinglian was holding the ultrasound scan for a long time. There were only 2 black dots on the scan. Gu Jinglian felt that these 2 black dots looked like Chu Ho had swallowed 2 potatoes. He could not tell what they were. On the report, there were black words on a white background. They were categorized as twins A and B. There was no doubt that they were fraternal twins. This proved that there were 2 little lives in her belly. Perhaps, one was a son and the other was a daughter. Gu Jinglian's cold lips gradually curved into a faint smile. Chu Ho observed the change in his expression and did not know whether to laugh or cry. "Gu Jinglian, what's with your half-smiling, half-crying expression?" Gu Jinglian heard this and immediately controlled his expression. He pretended to be calm and said, "I'm not smiling. The corners of your mouth are curled up. Is this not considered a smile? Gu Jinglian, if you're happy, just smile. You didn't see the expression on your face. It's uglier than crying. Gu Jinglian narrowed his eyes unhappily. Stop talking. She was disturbing his good mood. Do you want this child? Chu Ho suddenly asked. Gu Jinglian suddenly stopped and looked at her with a dangerous gaze. She asked this question. Did she not want to keep it? You don't want it? No, but I have to abide by your opinion. Chu Ho continued, we have Xiao Bao, Lin Shi, and now there are 2 more in your belly. There are 4 children in the family. I don't know if you're mentally prepared. Are you afraid that the 4 children will turn the world upside down? I'm really worried about that. In Chu Ho's heart, Gu Jinglian was undoubtedly the big devil. If the pure blood of this big devil gave birth to a little devil and a little witch, then the Gu family would not have a peaceful day in the future. Since you're pregnant, then give birth to them properly. It was not as if he could not afford to raise them. Even if they lived in a group like pigs, the Gu family would not be turned upside down. What if Xiao Bao can't accept it? Chu Ho had seen many families with 2 children. De Bao and Heir Bao fought for favor and bullied Heir Bao. Chapter 37:15. Although she felt that Xiao Bao would not bully his younger siblings or resent them, she still had such concerns. If she was worried about her younger siblings, her energy would be distracted and Xiao Bao would feel aggrieved. Why are you worried about this? Gu Jinglian did not think much of it. If he doesn't accept it, just beat him up. What a violent solution. Gu Jinglian said, get in the car. We'll talk when we get home. Just as he turned around, he could no longer suppress the joy in his heart, and his lips curved into a gentle arc. He did not know when it started. Compared to the past, he was extremely disgusted when he saw children. Now, he actually had a lot of expectations for the 2 children who were about to arrive. Once, when he was waiting for a red light in the car, he saw a man passing by with a cute little girl sitting on his shoulder. The father was holding his daughter's hands and laughing along the way. He actually felt a little envious. That scene was too heartwarming. It actually made him yearn for it. It was said that daughters looked more like their fathers, while sons looked more like their mothers. Then, would his daughter look more like him? Gu Jinglian's thoughts seemed to drift far away. It drifted to 7 months later, on the day of Chu He's delivery. He imagined the nurse carefully handing a pink baby girl into his arms. His mood at that time should be as splendid as fireworks, right? Look, even before the children were born, Gu Jinglian's balance was already unreservedly leaning towards his daughter's side. In the future, when Chu Ho's twins were born, the other one would probably cry miserably. She had met a father who liked her daughter and had nowhere to vent her grievances. The share of doting had already been decided before the children were born. Chu Ho did not know what Gu Jinglian was thinking. When the 2 of them returned to the Gu residence, Xiao Bao happened to come home from school. Gu Jinglian knew about it and ordered Uncle Fu to summon Xiao Bao into the study. Chu Ho originally wanted to follow in, but was stopped by Uncle Fu at the door, saying that Gu Jinglian had something to talk to Xiao Bao. In the study, Gu Jinglian hugged Xiao Bao in his arms and asked him a question seriously. Xiao Bao, do you want a younger brother? Xiao Bao looked confused. No. What about your younger sister? No. Xiao Bao said honestly, I already have an older brother. Gu, gently, and kindly, stared at him. Now, your mother is pregnant with 2 Xiao Bao babies. Whether you like it or not, you must not bully your younger sister in the future, okay? Xiao Bao's eyelids twitched. Daddy, why didn't you tell me not to bully my younger brother? You can bully my younger brother. Biological father. He was really his biological father. Xiao Bao clenched his fists and suddenly understood. Oh, I know. Dad, you value girls more than boys. No wonder I have no place in your eyes. You don't like boys at all. Gu Jinglian played it down. You found out. The main thing was that this guy was really asking for a beating sometimes. Xiao Bao was about to say something when he suddenly reacted and sucked in a breath of cold air. Mommy is pregnant? Gu Jinglian nodded. She's pregnant with 2 babies? Gu Jinglian nodded again. Xiao Bao suddenly clenched his fists excitedly. I'm going to be an older brother. Gu Jinglian reached out and pinched his nose gently, which was rare for him. Aha! Wow! That's great! Chapter 37:16. Chu Ho could clearly hear Xiao Bao's cheers from outside the study. Yeah! I'm going to be an older brother. She widened her eyes in surprise as she looked at the door. She was a little surprised and also a little shocked by Xiao Bao's attitude. She had been so worried earlier because she was worried that Xiao Bao wouldn't be able to accept having a younger brother and sister. She didn't expect that Xiao Bao's anticipation for the 2 babies was no less than hers and no less than Gu Jinglian's. She relaxed her eyebrows and smiled. Her heart felt warm. It was her fortune to have such an older son like Xiao Bao. Knowing Xiao Bao's attitude, Chu Ho felt as if a rock had been lifted off her chest. The father and son's conversation ended. When the door opened, Chu Ho had already left quietly. Xiao Bao ran happily to Lin Shi's room. He found out from Uncle Fu that Lin Shi hadn't finished school yet. Lin Shi went to primary school while Xiao Bao was still in kindergarten. Hence, Lin Shi finished school a little later. The days of waiting were a little torturous. Xiao Bao couldn't wait to share this great news with Lin Shi. After waiting for a while, Lin Shi finally finished school. From afar, they could hear Lin Shi stepping into the backyard and greeting Aunt Qin and Uncle Fu with a smile. Xiao Bao ran down the stairs excitedly and threw himself at Lin Shi while cheering. Lin Shi! Lin Shi caught Xiao Bao in shock. Xiao Bao threw himself into his arms and hugged his neck as he jumped up and down. Lin Shi, we're going to be older brothers. We're going to be older brothers. Before Lin Shi could understand what was going on, he heard Xiao Bao introduce seriously, in the future, you'll be the eldest brother and I'll be the second brother, hee. When Uncle Fu and Aunt Qin heard this, they looked at each other and smiled. Lin Shi was a little surprised. Xiao Bao, what do you mean by that? I don't understand. Let me tell you a secret. Xiao Bao tugged at Lin Shi's sleeve and whispered to him, Mommy is pregnant. Father said that mother is pregnant with 2 children, a younger brother and a younger sister. Lin Shi stared blankly with his eyes wide open, unable to come back to his senses. This news, it was too unexpected. What a pleasant surprise. It was not until a long time later that Lin Shi reacted. She grabbed Xiao Bao's hand and asked in disbelief, Really? Really, really? Xiao Bao nodded solemnly. Daddy told me that himself. Oh my God, Lin Shi said, then they must be twins. Twins? Yes, a pair of twins, a boy and a girl, this is very rare. There's a very small chance that they'll get pregnant at the same time. When Xiao Bao heard this, he was even more surprised. Really? I thought it was normal to have 2 babies. No way. Lin Shi was also excited. She pulled Xiao Bao and skipped in circles. Xiao Bao, we have a younger brother and sister. Yeah. Xiao Bao asked curiously, do you like a younger brother or a younger sister? Me? I like both. If we're talking about who I like more, I'd like a younger sister more. He did not have a younger sister. Growing up in North Africa, those who were younger than him were all younger than him. I like a younger brother. Why? Xiao Bao said matter-of-factly, because Dad seems to like a younger sister more. No one likes a younger brother, so I'll like him. Also, if there's a younger brother, I can teach him how to play football. When Lin Shi heard this, they looked at each other and smiled. Chapter 37:17. The wedding was imminent. However, Fu Bo had already arranged everything, no matter how big or small. In addition, Chu Ho was pregnant. For the Gu family, it could be said that it was a double blessing. It had been a long time since the Gu family had such a grand occasion. Everyone in the Gu family was in a state of excitement. However, since Chu-ho was pregnant, she could not drink at the wedding. Therefore, Gu Jinglian had already informed them in advance. It was more of a threat than a greeting. Whoever dared to force Chu-ho to drink would have their hands chopped off. When Uncle Fu heard this, he did not know whether to laugh or cry. Old Master's ability to protect his wife was improving day by day. However, this was also a good thing. At least, with Old Master's arrogant personality, he knew how to dote on his wife. It was really not easy. 2 days before the wedding, Uncle Fu took Chu-ho back to Uncle Fu's house. Aunt Fu had already decorated the boudoir a few days in advance. Chu-ho moved into the boudoir. Looking at Aunt Fu's thoughtful decorations, she sighed in her heart. She was so thoughtful. She was really thoughtful. Uncle Fu really treated her like his own daughter. Everything was ready. However, there was some disagreement about the bridesmaids. Chu-ho did not have many good friends, so there was a problem with the choice of bridesmaids. It was not good to have no bridesmaids. On the wedding day, there were many things to do. If there were no bridesmaids, there would be fewer people to help. Fortunately, Uncle Fu had a niece and a nephew, so he used them to make up the numbers temporarily. However, looking at the 2 bridesmaids, it seemed that there were not enough bridesmaids. During the wedding, Gu Jinglian's brothers were quite eye-catching. If they could not hold the door, it would be too boring. They did not know where Uncle Fu had gathered a group of sisters. It was said that many of them were from the side branches of the Gu family. Gu Jinglian did not have many cousins, but it was not a small number either. It was still possible to gather 7 or 8 of them. The group of sisters had come over the night before, but they were a little uneasy in front of Chu-ho. This awkwardness was built on the fact that Chu-he was Gu Jinglian's wife. They were very afraid of Gu Jinglian. In the Gu family, Gu Jinglian was the most authoritative person. He could do whatever he wanted. Just by standing in front of him, there was an indescribable pressure. However, Chu-ho was very easy to get along with. After a while, they became familiar with each other. They saw that Chu-ho didn't put on any airs and didn't feel any pressure. At night, one of Gu Jinglian's cousins even worked hard to do a full set of skincare for Chu-ho, saying that his makeup would be better the next day. Fortunately, Uncle Fu's house was big enough. There were 3 or 4 rooms in total. There was also a very long sofa in the living room. As a woman from the Gu family, she did not care about trifles. She could make do with a night on the sofa. There were a total of 7 or 8 people. The 3 of them squeezed into one room and slept just like that. However, Chu-ho lay on the bed and couldn't fall asleep. She fell asleep at 10 o'clock in the morning. When she woke up at 1 o'clock in the morning, she couldn't fall asleep. She didn't want to sleep anymore. She decided not to sleep. She turned on the TV and turned it off, intending to watch TV until dawn. The 2 bridesmaids who slept with her saw that she had woken up and were too nervous to fall asleep. The 3 of them got up and chatted while putting on facial masks and watching TV. At 3 o'clock in the morning, the makeup artist and the styling team arrived. Chu-ho's makeup was a little complicated. With her hair tied up, it took 3 hours of work. Chapter 37:18. Everyone in the room woke up and started to get busy. Say, today is our cousin's big day. If we don't take advantage of this opportunity to play some pranks, we might not have the chance in the future. It was not known who brought this up, but the group of people all agreed. What ideas should we come up with? Me. One of the women raised her hand. I've prepared a detailed strategy in advance. When the groom comes to pick the bride up, we'll play some games for him to play. If he can't win, he can't come in. Hence, the group of people started to get busy. First, he cut the red ribbon into sections and stuck both ends with glue, blocking the door. It was as if he simulated the infrared aurora scanning of the Matrix. Only by using these infrared rays, and not touching any of them, could they enter the house. There were also people who prepared toast and mustard. They smeared a thick layer of mustard on each piece of toast. If they lost the game, the bride and groomsmen would have to eat the toast covered in mustard without missing a single bit. That's too much. Chu-ho felt a little suffocated when he saw that they had smeared a thick layer of mustard. Besides the mustard toast, there were also fresh lemon slices and dried chili. Oh my god. Would this kill anyone? After preparing the game, someone suddenly suggested, how about we play a thrilling game? We'll give Uncle Jinglian a special surprise. The group of people gathered together and started to whisper. Then, everyone suddenly looked at Chu-ho with evil smiles. When the latter saw their evil smiles, he couldn't help but feel his hair stand on end. On the other hand, Gu Jinglian woke up at 5:30 in the morning. He washed up, dressed up, tidied his hair a little, and put on his suit. The process of preparation for a man was much simpler than that of a woman. It had to be said that with Gu Jinglian's height and temperament, he looked extremely handsome in a suit. His domineering aura made people not dare to look at him directly. At 7:28 in the morning, Gu Jinglian set off to pick up the bride. The mighty convoy set off for Uncle Fu's house. When they arrived downstairs at 8:08, Gu Jinglian and his brothers went upstairs. Hearing the sound of firecrackers downstairs, the sisters in the house became nervous. They're here, they're here. Close the door. The group of people hurriedly locked the door and blocked the entrance. Just as the door closed, the elevator opened. Gu Jinglian walked to the door and saw that the door was closed. The best man beside him held a bouquet of flowers and knocked on the door. We're here. Open the door. How can I open the door without a red packet? That's right. We have more than 10 sisters working so hard. We won't open the door for you if you don't give us a red packet. Gu Jinglian snorted disdainfully. To him, anything that could be solved with a red packet was nothing. The groomsmen had prepared a big bag of red packets. They casually took out a dozen of them and stuffed them into the gap under the door. Some of the red packets were especially bulging. There was a thick stack of cash inside, and the gap in the door could not be squeezed in. Gu Jinglian said angrily, "Didn't I tell you to stuff less? Isn't this because it's easier to get things done with red packets? Change to a smaller number." Yes, Master Gu. The best man stuffed more than 20 red packets into the room and said pitifully, "Can you open the door now? Don't let our Master Gu wait too long. There are too few red packets. It's not enough." Chapter 37:19. The door opened a crack. When the groomsmen saw that, what were they waiting for? They immediately barged through the door. Gu Jinglian walked in and was surprised to find many red ribbons at the entrance. They looked like lasers. It seemed that they had planned to prank him from the moment they entered the door. You guys are really good at pranking. How can you say that we are pranking him? This is a test. That's right. The bride is the most important today. How can we let you take her away so easily? The best part is yet to come. Groom, you have to go through with the groomsmen first. Be careful not to touch the red ribbons. Otherwise, if one of you touches it, everyone will be punished. Gu Jinglian looked back at the groomsmen and groomsmen. Fortunately, none of them were particularly fat, so he still had some confidence. For his skills, this trick was not enough. Gu Jinglian took the lead and went through the dangerous area. However, he was the second to be hit and broke 2 of the ribbons. Stupid teammate. The bridesmaids came over with a tray. There was a pile of toast stuffed with mustard. Gu Jinglian did not know what was on it and asked in confusion, "What's that green on it?" "Mustard. Mustard." Gu Jinglian's face darkened and darkened. The groomsmen saw that his face had changed and immediately volunteered, "We will take all of it." "Mr. Gu, you don't have to eat it." Seeing that the groomsmen wanted to take all of it, the bridesmaids objected firmly, "No, the groom has to eat it too. This is the rule of the game. We can't go against it." Gu Jinglian was not a man who would drag his feet. He picked up a piece and took a bite. The power of toast with mustard was not to be underestimated. With just one bite, Gu Jinglian's originally fair and handsome face was like a volcano erupting. Blood rushed to his head, and it was so red that it looked like it was dripping blood. Cough, cough, Gu Jinglian covered his mouth and choked. However, the bridesmaids said that if he did not eat the mustard toast, the bridesmaids would not let him in. There were a few more checkpoints inside. Gu Jinglian had no choice but to bite the bullet and eat all the toast. However, he felt uncomfortable after eating it. It was spicy. Choke. He felt like his lungs were burning. The groom has eaten. The groomsmen should hurry up too. Oh, the groomsmen took the toast pitifully. They took a deep breath and took a bite of the toast with their eyes closed. In an instant, everyone's faces turned red, they could not eat or vomit. What was even worse was that there was no purified water to serve them. Just by swallowing the toast dry, half of the people were gone. The bridesmaids and sisters laughed gloatingly. Among so many people, Gu Jinglian was the only one with the strongest mental fortitude. He was still standing after eating. Someone complained, "Su Feng, it's all your fault. If you hadn't knocked the ribbon off, we wouldn't have to eat this thing. There's so much toast. Eat it all." The groomsmen gave the leftover toast to the culprit. The latter had no choice but to swallow his grievance and finish all the toast. Usually, when Gu Jinglian was around, these people would never dare to be rash. Chapter 37:20. Since it was a joyous occasion, they were certain that Gu Jinglian would not act up on such a joyous occasion. Hence, they went all out. There was a long corridor leading to the boudoir, and it was covered with shiatsu boards. What are these? The groomsmen squatted on the ground and touched them with their hands. They did not feel anything just by touching them, but if they took off their shoes and stepped on them directly, the feeling was indescribable. How do we do this? The bridesmaids said, "Groomsmen, take off your shoes and carry the groom over." Gu Jinglian was speechless. The groomsmen and the band of brothers fell silent. This was King crazy. If you don't pass this obstacle, you can't enter this door. The bridesmaids spoke again, their attitude firm. The band of brothers had nothing to say. They exchanged glances with the groomsmen and had no choice but to take off their shoes and try stepping on the shiatsu board. It was itchy and painful, so they immediately retracted their feet. "I'd rather step on the tip of a knife than step on this thing. That's right. It makes the soles of my feet itchy and painful." The bridesmaids laughed. "No way." Gu Jinglian's expression turned cold. "Hurry up." Since the devil had spoken, the others did not dare to delay. They quickly took off their shoes and lifted Gu Jinglian up. Two of them held his arms, and another two lifted his long legs. The four of them formed a human palanquin and carried Gu Jinglian onto the shiatsu board. The group of people wailed in pain. All sorts of screams were heard. "Sister-in-law, spare us. Sister-in-law, it hurts. Hurry up and come out to help us. Sister-in-law, let us go. We came here sincerely to pick up the bride." The group of people wailed like ghosts and howled like wolves, but there was no response from inside the door. It seemed that Chu Ho was determined to ignore them. The band of brothers could only grit their teeth and close their eyes. They endured the excruciating pain in the soles of their feet and carried Gu Jinglian to the door. The shiatsu board was only a few meters long, but it took them a few minutes. The brothers put Gu Jinglian down. The groomsmen also took off their shoes and walked over. They knocked on the door and said flatteringly, "Sister-in-law, we're here. Open the door." Inside, the sisters and bridesmaids were blocking the door, but they did not let him in. Gu Jinglian turned the door handle, but the door was locked from the inside. It seemed that it would not be easy to get in. The groomsmen were also sensible. They immediately stuffed a large amount of red packets into the gap of the door. However, even after a large stack of red packets was stuffed in, the bridesmaid inside only cared about taking the red packets and refused to open the door. "Open the door. I've given you so many red packets. Why won't you let me in? That's right, we groom can't wait. There's not much time left. Don't miss the auspicious hour. Groom, did you see the ribbon under the door? When Gu Jinglian heard this, he looked down. Sure enough, there were a few red ribbons under the door. I saw it. One of the ribbons is tied to the bride's wrist. If you can pick the ribbon tied to the bride's wrist, you can enter the door. Gu Jinglian squatted at the door and counted. There were a total of 10 red ribbons. However, only one of the 10 ribbons was tied to Chu Ho's wrist. It seemed that it would be difficult to pick that one. The groomsmen also became nervous. Chapter 37:21. The best man patted his chest and said, "Push-ups are nothing. Mr. Gu, don't worry about it. We can do 100 push-ups evenly." As soon as he finished speaking, the person behind the door said slowly, "It's not that everyone has to do 100 push-ups. It's that everyone has to do 100 push-ups." Everyone was silent. That's too harsh. That's right. How is it possible to pick 1 out of 10 in such a short time? The bridesmaid inside said disapprovingly, "I just heard someone say that push-ups are nothing." Everyone was silent again. 100 push-ups it is. It's not like you can't do it. Gu Jinglian directly picked one and pulled it out in one go. There was a burst of booing in the room. That's wrong, that's wrong. 100 push-ups. 100 push-ups take up too much time. 50. 50 would be more efficient. Then give the remaining 50 to him in a red packet. Since the bridesmaid had spoken, the best man naturally quickly stuffed the red packet through the crack of the door. There were only red packets. Anything that could be solved with red packets was a small matter. After stuffing the red packets, the best man nimbly finished the 50 push-ups. These 50 push-ups were naturally a piece of cake for Gu Jinglian. In just a few minutes, he finished all the push-ups. Continue. There were only 9 ribbons left. In the name of it, this game of picking up the bride was a test of telepathy. However, in reality, it was purely based on luck. If it was purely based on luck, it would be hard to say. Probability was the most difficult thing to figure out. Gu Jinglian narrowed his eyes and looked at the ribbons one by one. He carefully compared them and suddenly realized that there was something fishy about one of the ribbons. There were obvious signs of a knot. Gu Jinglian immediately grabbed the ribbon and pulled it back. As expected, this ribbon was connected to the ribbon on the bride's wrist. It immediately tightened. When the best man saw this, he was surprised that Gu Jinglian could pick the ribbon so quickly. While looking at him covetously, they asked, "Is this the one?" "Yes." It sounded like the bridesmaid's answer was a little reluctant. It seemed that this was the one. "Can you open the door now?" The best man said angrily, "You just said that as long as we get the ribbon, we can go in and pick up the bride. Open the door." The bridesmaids at the door did not seem to dare to make things too difficult for Gu Jinglian. Although they were very reluctant, they had no choice but to open the door. As soon as the door opened a crack, the groomsmen rushed forward and pushed the door open with force. Gu Jinglian walked in casually. As soon as he appeared in the boudoir, he was dressed in a suit and had an extraordinary aura. In a traditional wedding ceremony, the groom would often go out looking good, but in the process of receiving the bride, he would be embarrassed by the bridesmaids. However, this was where Gu Jinglian's power lay. With him present, no one dared to make things difficult for him. In just half an hour, Gu Jinglian had easily entered her room. It had to be said that Gu Jinglian was somewhat frightening. No one dared to offend the demon king of the Gu clan. Even the members of the Gu family stepped back because of Gu Jinglian's aura. Chapter 37:22. Gu Jinglian walked in. Naturally, the bridesmaids had prepared a series of game shows. However, Gu Jinglian had already prepared for it. The groomsmen that he had formed were all talented gamers. They were all experts in nightclubs. Thus, each of them showed their prowess and resolved many difficult and dangerous games. The bridesmaids racked their brains and used all their tricks. However, when faced with Gu Jinglian's groomsmen, they were at their wits' end. The photographer in charge of the itinerary immediately said, "Groom, lift the bride's veil and kiss the bride." As he spoke, the photographer raised the camera and aimed it at Gu Jinglian. Obviously, he wanted to capture this classic scene. Gu Jinglian walked to the bedside and looked at Chu Ho, who was sitting cross-legged on the bed. She was wearing a traditional Chinese and phoenix robe and a red veil. She looked very charming. From the moment he walked in until now, she had not said a word. She had been silent the entire time. Was she nervous? Gu Jinglian was a little doubtful. This was the first time in her life that she had experienced a wedding. Could she be so nervous that she could not speak? Just as he was about to reach out and lift Chu Ho's veil, the photographer immediately said, "Does the groom want to say a few words to the bride?" Gu Jinglian raised his eyebrows and looked at him with some confusion. "Say what?" "Some romantic confessions. Or, you can say some promises." "I didn't prepare anything." Everyone was silent. However, Gu Jinglian's reaction was not very surprising. After all, with his personality, he might not be able to lower himself to prepare some mushy and pretentious confessions. He had never cared about things that were too superficial and superficial. The photographer was still encouraging him. "Just say a few words." Gu Jinglian pursed his lips. His gloomy expression made everyone present feel that the atmosphere was a little cold. The aura that emanated from his body filled every inch of the room. Even the cameraman was shivering from the cold. So cold, so scary, he was not a member of the Gu family. Instead, he was a photographer that Uncle Fu had specially hired to record every happy moment of the wedding. Uncle Fu had specially instructed him to make the video as heartwarming and romantic as possible. He wanted to make it into a video so that he could keep it as a precious memory in the future. However, this bridegroom was quite uncooperative. The photographer silently picked up his DSLR with an expression that said, "Please go ahead." He didn't dare to say anything else. Gu Jinglian turned around and his gaze fell on the bride. He gently reached out his hands and slowly lifted the corner of the veil. Everyone was so nervous that they held their breaths. The bridesmaids, on the other hand, were grinning wickedly. As the veil was slowly lifted, what was revealed was not Chu Ho's delicate and beautiful face, but a man's extremely rough jaw. Then, the face of an unfamiliar man was exposed in front of Gu Jinglian. The bride wasn't Chu Ho. The person sitting on the bed was only wearing the wedding gown and a veil. Until now, he had not realized that the bride on the bed was not Chu Ho at all. Gu Jinglian was speechless. The bride had been switched. He had deliberately broken in, but he did not expect that the bride he had prepared to welcome would disappear into thin air and be replaced by a rough stranger. D***MN. Chapter 37-23. The scene froze for a moment, and the air seemed to have frozen. After a long period of dead silence, the crowd suddenly burst into laughter. Ha 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 ha. Even the groomsmen fell to the ground laughing. This scene was really too impactful. Gu Jinglian stood in front of the bed in his suit, his face ashen. However, on the bed, there was a man wearing a phoenix coronet and a red robe. It was really frightening. The fake bride actually acted coy and pretended to be a woman as she threw herself at Gu Jinglian and said coquettishly in a rough voice, "Groom, what's wrong with you? I've been waiting for you for a long time." The crowd roared with laughter again. However, Gu Jinglian smiled and stared at him coldly. In the next second, a voice as cold as ice escaped from his throat. "Where is she?" Whoosh. It was as if the Arctic wind had blown past. The people present could not laugh at all. It was as if they had been frozen into ice sculptures. It was so cold. Originally, they had good intentions. They wanted to add some fun to the wedding and make it more festive. However, Gu Jinglian did not seem to like it very much, very not happy. Happy. Such a joke. He looked coldly at the fake bride on the bed and said indifferently, "If you don't hand her over, I'll break your bones." Gulp. Gulp, everyone subconsciously swallowed and trembled in fear. Save me. This must be the scariest groom in history. Seeing that no one spoke, Gu Jinglian turned around abruptly. His gaze fell on the bridesmaids and he questioned, "Where's the bride?" "She's here, she's here, she's here, next door." Upon hearing this, Gu Jinglian left the group of people in the room and strode towards the room next door. The room next door was not locked from the inside. Gu Jinglian turned the doorknob and pushed the door open. The room next door was also decorated with a festive atmosphere. It was decorated in an antique style, with a large bed made of solid wood and a Chinese dressing mirror. A bride was sitting on a chair in front of the Chinese-style mirror. Her red veil covered her entire face, so her appearance could not be seen clearly. However, this time, Gu Jinglian was a little more careful. He observed carefully. Based on the outline of the bride's body, he was almost certain that the bride in front of him was the real Chu Ho. When Chu Ho heard someone approaching the room, he felt inexplicably nervous. For some reason, she could not see who the person in front of her was because of the red veil covering her face. However, she was certain that the person in front of her was Gu Jinglian. The familiar temperament, the cold aura, she was sure, he was here. Chu Ho actually felt a little nervous. Her fingers were intertwined and her palms were covered in a thin layer of sweat. Gu Jinglian looked at her, but he was at a loss for words. He actually did not know what to say. The groomsmen and bridesmaids also rushed into the room. The room was not very big, so the others could only stand outside the door and watch. However, they saw Gu Jinglian standing in front of Chu Ho, not saying a word for a long time. "Bride, the groom is here to pick you up," one of the groomsmen said enthusiastically, but this made Chu Ho even more nervous. Gu Jinglian gently squatted down. His usually cold and arrogant expression showed a rare tenderness. He had never been good with words. In his silence, he reached out and gently placed his hand on the back of hers. His large palm lifted her hand and wrapped it in his palm. Her hand was not as delicate as other women's. Years of training had left a thin layer of calluses on her palm. Chapter 37-24. Holding her warm hand, ripples appeared in Gu Jinglian's heart. An imperceptible tenderness spread out in circles without a trace. Gu Jinglian gently rubbed her hand and asked calmly, "Come with me, okay?" Chu Ho didn't speak. Her red lips opened, but they were so dry that she couldn't form a coherent sentence. The bridesmaid reminded him carefully, "Groom, the bride's shoes have been hidden. You have to find them before you can leave." When Gu Jinglian heard this, he suddenly stood up and began to search the room. Even with his searching skills, he couldn't find the red wedding shoes that the bridesmaids had tried so hard to hide. The groomsmen were also anxious. Where are the shoes? However, they knew how to deal with this situation. They immediately walked to the bridesmaids with more than 10 red packets and smiled ingratiatingly. "Good sister, where did you hide the bride's wedding shoes?" The bridesmaids exchanged playful glances with each other. "How can we give you a hint so casually? If you want to give us a hint, you should at least give us something." The groomsmen looked at each other. They knew that this amount of red packets wasn't enough to get them to reveal anything. Thus, they took out all the red packets from their bags and presented them to the bridesmaids. "Good sister, this should be enough. You should be able to give us a hint now." The bridesmaids accepted the red packets with a smile and winked mysteriously. Isn't there a saying that goes, 100 years of cultivation is needed to cross the sea on the same boat? 100 years of cultivation is needed to cross the sea on the same boat? This time, everyone was even more puzzled. How could there be a boat in such a small room? 100 years of cultivation is needed to cross the sea on the same boat? Could it be that the wedding shoes were hidden in the model of the boat? Is there a model of the boat in the room? Yes. The model of the boat might be placed together with the model. The groomsmen started to suggest ideas. However, when they said this, the bridesmaids laughed in disdain. "What idiots! They already said that it was a hint. If there really was a model of the boat, how could they give such an obvious hint? While the groomsmen were searching for the model of the ship in the room, Gu Jinglian strode to the bed, lifted the quilt with one hand, and grabbed the pillow. Everyone followed his gaze and saw a pair of bright red wedding shoes quietly hidden under the pillow. At this moment, everyone finally understood. The hint of the phrase, 100 years of cultivation leads to crossing the same boat, should be the next sentence, 1,000 years of cultivation leads to sleeping on the same pillow. This, sleeping on the same pillow, wasn't the wedding shoes hidden under the pillow? It had to be said that these bridesmaids were quite smart. They were quite particular about hiding the wedding shoes. At the same time, she was impressed by Gu Jinglian's shrewdness. He immediately guessed the hiding place of the wedding shoes. After finding the wedding shoes, Gu Jinglian walked over to Chu Ho with them. He looked at her deeply and suddenly knelt on one knee. He gently lifted one of Chu He's legs, and under the fringed hem of her skirt, a fair and delicate foot fell into his palm. He held her foot with one hand and slowly put a red high heel on her heel with the other. When he had put on the wedding shoes for her, Gu Jinglian looked up and gently lifted the veil. At this moment, Chu Ho's face was extremely red with embarrassment. Chapter 37:25. Gu Jinglian also noticed her blushing face. Although she had applied blush on her face, he could still tell if it was blush or shyness. Knowing that she was shy, Gu Jinglian did not point it out. Instead, he asked seriously, "Can I kiss my bride now?" Chu Ho pursed her lips, but her shoulders shrunk. She did not expect Gu Jinglian to be like other men and say things that made one's heart pound like thunder. However, when he said that, she did not feel that he was being frivolous. Instead, she felt a sweet feeling growing from the bottom of her heart. Everyone saw that she did not move and did not give a definite answer. They cheered enthusiastically. Gu Jinglian gave a rare smile. This was probably the first sincere smile he had given since he stepped into this room. "Close your eyes," he said. Chu Ho was reluctant at first, but Gu Jinglian's burning gaze fell on her face. She did not think too much and closed her eyes. Gu Jinglian lowered his head and gently covered her lips. This was the first time he had kissed her so gently. It was just a light touch, but it was more confusing than a passionate kiss. He kissed her slowly, but Chu Ho felt that her heart was beating faster and faster. She even felt like she was about to suffocate. The faster her heart beat, the more guilty she felt. It was as if her strong heartbeat would reach his ears. Gu Jinglian looked up and smiled at her. She thought that her heartbeat had been spied on by him, and she felt even more embarrassed. She had experienced life and death, and had also passed through the gates of hell. However, no matter how thrilling the experience was, it had never made her change her expression. But now, the color of her face changed again and again. In the end, it became the most beautiful color in Gu Jinglian's eyes. Gu Jinglian lifted her up. Chu Ho's blood immediately rushed to her head, and she did not know what was going on. She subconsciously lowered her head and buried her face in his chest. She only heard someone laughing and saying, "The bride is shy. The bride is so beautiful. But why is your face so red? Did you use too much blush?" When Chu Ho heard this, he lowered his head shyly. She did not even know how she got into the car. It was only when Gu Jinglian put her down in the back seat that she realized she was already in the wedding car. Gu Jinglian was surprised to see her blushing face. In his impression, Chu Ho was an extremely introverted person, but he was not a person who blushed easily. Perhaps it was because Gu Jinglian had always appeared cold and aloof, but he did not know that when she blushed, it was too much. However, he didn't say anything in front of outsiders. It was only after they got into the car that a certain man began to make fun of her. "Why is your face so red?" It would have been better if he hadn't mentioned it. Now that he mentioned it, Chu Ho felt even more uneasy. She raised her hand to touch her face and realized that her face was very hot. She immediately explained, "Oh, maybe, it's too hot. The sun isn't very bright today." Why are you feeling hot? Gu Jinglian glanced at her. Are your clothes very thick? Yeah. She actually responded. How could Gu Jinglian not see that she was blushing because of shyness? She actually said that her blush was due to the heat in front of him. Therefore, he wanted to expose her hypocrisy, so he actually unbuttoned her clothes. Chapter 37:26. Chu Ho was shocked by the man's sudden action. She retreated and grabbed his wrist. She said angrily, "What are you doing? I think you're hot." Chu Ho was speechless. "I was just joking. You don't look like someone who would make a cold joke." Chu Ho was speechless again. She turned her head away angrily and did not look at him anymore. Gu Jinglian found it interesting. She actually had the delicate side of a little woman, but she was actually quite cute. The car ride was not far, but the journey took a long time. Perhaps because of the wedding, the two of them were sitting in the car now, but their identities were completely different. She was his wife, and he was her husband. Therefore, the change in their identities gave people a different feeling. She was a little uneasy, but Gu Jinglian was very calm and did not feel uneasy at all. It was said that during a wedding, men would be nervous, touched, surprised, and even cry. However, when it came to Gu Jinglian, he was calm and did not have any extra expression. He was too calm. Chu Ho was affected by him and gradually calmed down. The wedding was arranged in an orderly manner. Uncle Fu was very efficient. There was nothing to worry about. As he said, Chu Ho only needed to wear the wedding dress. Everything else had been arranged properly. Even the accident at the wedding had been predicted. The wedding car suddenly slowed down. The man sitting in the front passenger seat suddenly said in a low voice, "Master, Uncle Fu was right. The Meng family is chasing after us." The Meng family was also a big family in the capital. A few generations ago, they were also a rich and powerful family. However, in recent years, they had some conflicts with the Gu family in business. Most importantly, the Meng family's power was also a little dark. Therefore, when Gu Jinglian's wedding was held, the Meng family naturally wanted to take revenge on the Gu family and cause trouble. However, Uncle Fu was not as smart as he was. He had already predicted this and planned the route in advance. The roads in the capital were well connected. This was something that had already been planned in advance. Gu Jinglian said, "Follow the route and go around them." Understood. After the car passed a traffic light, it sped towards another road. There were many policemen on the road near the center, so it was naturally difficult to do anything. If it was a small road, it would be a different story. Gu Jinglian naturally did not want these things to happen. After all, it was their wedding day, and no one wanted to be unlucky. However, Gu Jinglian was not so easy to deal with when the unlucky person came knocking on his door. However, one day, Gu Jinglian instructed his subordinates in advance that it was okay to fight, but not to draw blood. At most, they would break a few bones, but there was no need to draw blood. Regardless of whether it was his own blood or the enemy's blood, he should not see it. However, it could also be foreseen that the Meng family would definitely bring weapons when they came. However, the people from the Gu family weren't weak either. Not to mention bringing knives, even if they brought guns, they wouldn't be able to cause any bloodshed. The convoy drove to another road, and there was no one around. The people from the Meng family also became arrogant. They rushed over without restraint and directly stopped the Gu family's convoy. The car stopped. Gu Jinglian said to Chu Ho, "Stay in the car. Don't move." "Okay." Chu Ho also appeared very calm. Uncle Fu had also told her about this so that she wouldn't make a fuss if something unexpected happened. Chapter 37:27. However, Chu Ho did not think much of it. With Gu Jinglian's identity and background, it was inevitable that something like this would happen. The people from the Meng family got out of the car and started cursing. Some of them were holding iron rods, while others were holding machetes. It was obvious that they were going to fight to the death. Gu Jinglian scoffed. He had never taken a small character like the Meng family seriously. What era was it now? They were still behaving like third-rate hooligans. The people from the Gu family also got out of the car. The people who were hiding by the roadside also surrounded them. As soon as Gu Jinglian pushed open the door, the people from the Meng family saw him and swarmed toward him dauntlessly. Two people broke through the encirclement. They raised the iron rods in their hands and waved them at him. Gu Jinglian did not even look at him. He did not even raise his hand, which was in his trousers. He raised his leg and kicked the man to the ground. He turned around and kicked the other man's calf. The other man knelt on the ground on the spot and could no longer stand up. It turned out that this kick had broken his knee. Gu Jinglian rarely had the chance to show his skills. However, this did not mean that he could not deal with it when he encountered an accident. In other words, the best fighter in the Gu family was standing in front of him. He still had to think carefully about how to deal with him. Such a small role was not worth watching. Chu Ho sat in the car, but he was a little nervous. Through the window, he saw Gu Jinglian's figure disappear into the crowd. He did not know where he was. There was fighting outside, and the roars were intense. People kept flying out of the crowd. They were really flying. They lay on the ground and wailed. Some could get up, while others twitched and struggled on the ground. They could not get up no matter what. However, the people from the Gu family were ruthless. They were ruthless, but there was not a single drop of blood. Today was Master Gu's big day. No blood could be seen. It was bad luck. Even though many people from the Meng family came with knives, there was no blood. Just as Chu Ho was feeling nervous, he caught a glimpse of a bare-backed man with a tattoo of Guan Yu on his back. He was sneaking toward the wedding car. He deliberately avoided the eyes of the Gu family. Plus, he was not very strong, so it was easy for people to overlook him. Chu Ho raised his eyebrows in confusion. Why? Was this man here to kidnap her? Seeing that she was sitting in the car, he wanted to do something to her. Chu Ho smiled and leaned against the car door. When the driver saw this, before he could stop him, Chu Ho immediately unlocked the car and opened the door. This saved the man from smashing the car window and door with a stick. Chu Ho got out of the car in a bright red gown. The man was stunned. How could a woman be so daring? He had only seen her cowering in a corner, but he had never thought that she would be so brazen as to face him head-on. The man grinned. You're very brave, aren't you? Chu Ho asked, what do you want? What? The man smirked. F***CKU. Can you do it? Sure. Chu Ho's expression was very cold. He added, if you have the ability. When the man heard this, he found it even more interesting. He laughed and rushed toward her. He waved the metal rod in his hand toward her forehead. Chu Ho dodged nimbly. She turned sideways and raised her hand. She grabbed the man's wrist tightly and twisted it. The man screamed and the metal rod in his hand fell to the ground with a clang. Chapter 37:28. As Chu Ho said this, she sneered and grabbed the man's neck. She pressed him against the wall, clenched her fist and punched his lower abdomen. The man originally thought that she was at most a showy fighter, but who would have thought that this woman was not just a showy fighter, but a real fighter? If this punch landed on his nose bridge would break into 3 pieces. Ah! The man grimaced in pain and stared at her in shock. Chu Ho also knew that she could not afford to see blood today. Otherwise, she would have punched him in the face. Get lost if you don't want to die. He threw him to the side. The man fell to the ground, but immediately got up. Die. If you're so capable, why don't you kill me today? The man looked like a ruffian from the lowest rung of the He society. He was obviously trying to disgust Chu Ho on purpose. He knew that today was her wedding day and that no blood should be spilled, but he still wanted to disgust her. If you're so capable, why don't you kill me? Today is your wedding day. If you spill some blood, I won't die in vain. When Chu-ho heard this, she smiled and walked up to him. She grabbed him by the collar and said meaningfully, "If there's no blood, I can make you wish you were dead." In the past, when she was in the mercenary corps, she had seen and suffered torture without blood. If there was no blood, she could make him wish he was dead. When Gu Jinglian returned to the car after dealing with the small fries, he saw a person lying on the ground. However, although he could tell that it was a person, he did not look human anymore. His limbs were bent at an extremely twisted angle and there were many fractures, especially below the knee, which was bent at a 90-degree angle. It was horrifying. Just by looking at the tattoos on his body, he could tell that this was a fighter from the Meng family. On the other hand, Chu-ho was still sitting in the car in a dignified manner, as if she was still a beautiful and reserved bride. What happened? The chauffeur lowered the car window and said softly, "Master. Master Gu, what's going on?" Gu Jinglian stepped on the chest of the man on the ground and pressed down lightly. The man suddenly opened his eyes and gasped in pain, but he could not scream. He was still alive. His frown deepened as he guessed who was behind this. His attack was ruthless, but he had a good grasp of the situation. One could imagine how painful it must have been for this person to have all 4 of his limbs broken. However, not a drop of blood could be seen, and he was still alive. It must be Chu-ho's doing. However, who asked this man to come to him so eagerly? He thought that the bride was easy to bully and could be bullied by anyone. He thought that if Gu Jinglian was not around, he could take advantage of the situation. He was thinking too much. Although Chu-ho's skills were below his, he was not weak. Just how suicidal was this person to send himself to death? The driver still had lingering fears. At first, he was worried that Chu-ho was in danger, but when he saw Chu-ho's skills, he was terrified. What terrifying strength! She was indeed Master Gu's wife. Her strength was comparable to Master Gu's. On the scene, more than half of the Meng family's people were on the ground. Those who were left were the new members of the Meng family. Now, more people from the Gu family had arrived at the scene. Seeing that they had the advantage in numbers, it was difficult to resist. However, due to the Meng family's orders, they did not dare to advance or retreat. Chapter 37-29. They had all come to the capital from different places in order to earn a living. The Meng family had taken them in and taken the money, so they had to work for them. However, even if they had taken the money, they couldn't risk their lives, right? Hence, they hesitated and froze. No one dared to step forward or back away. After the Gu family members had boarded the motorcade, a portion of them stayed behind to guard the scene. The motorcade then looked at the Gu residence. The Meng family members were dumbfounded. Who would have thought that the Gu family members would be so fierce? They had not come here with the intention of arm wrestling with the Gu family. They just wanted to take the Gu family's joy away on such a joyous occasion. The Meng family originally wanted to catch the Gu family off guard. However, they did not expect Uncle Fu to be so experienced and foresee things. He had already taken this matter into account. So much so that he had calculated how they would travel and how much time they would waste. Even the timing of the motorcade's arrival at the Gu residence was extremely accurate. At the entrance of the Gu residence, the motorcade stopped in an orderly manner and formed a long line. At the entrance, the Gu family members stood in 2 rows and were fully armed. Most of the guests that Gu Jinglian had invited this time were of high status. Hence, to prevent unnecessary accidents, the security was very adequate. Uncle Fu and Aunt Qin stood at the entrance and greeted the guests. The guests gathered at the entrance. The best man opened the door for Gu Jinglian and got out of the car. The man went around to the other side of the car and opened the door. He stretched out his strong arms and carried Chu-ho out of the car. Fireworks shot up into the sky. The colorful fireworks fell on them. Chu-ho was shocked by the sudden sound of the fireworks. She could not help but shrink into his arms. This inadvertent dependence was obvious. Gu Jinglian laughed and said playfully, when I saw you fighting earlier, you weren't so timid. You're still talking about it. Chu Ho said angrily, why did this happen today? It's fine if there's no blood, but when there's blood, I feel unlucky. When Gu Jinglian heard this, his eyes turned cold. After the wedding, I will settle the score with the Meng family. After a pause, Gu Jinglian smiled and changed the topic. However, since today is our wedding, you don't have to think too much. Leave everything to me. Hand it to you. Fortunately, I didn't give it to you. However, fortunately, I have some skills. It won't be a problem to have a few more of those shrimp soldiers and crab generals. As Chu Ho spoke, he raised his head, his eyes filled with pride. In that case, Gu Jinglian should quickly go along with her thoughts and praise her. A woman who is worthy of me, Gu Jinglian, is naturally not an ordinary person. Chu Ho could not help but laugh. Are you praising me or yourself? You won't lose out if you praise me. Gu Jinglian lowered his eyes and stared into her eyes. Only a man like me is worthy of you. Chu Ho was amused by him, but she pursed her lips and held back her laughter. Speaking of which, aren't you tired of carrying me like this? From the entrance to the wedding room, they had to walk through several winding corridors like this. They had to pass through 3 courtyards, all of which were landscaped courtyards. She was very thin, but with her height, she definitely wasn't light. An ordinary man would be panting from exhaustion after carrying her for a while. Chapter 37:30. For Gu Jinglian, Chu Ho was considered relatively light. His arm strength was definitely not trained for nothing. When he was young, his hands and feet were tied to 10 kilograms of iron. He persevered and ran with weights to train his physical strength. Is it heavy? Gu Jinglian did not answer but asked instead, do you think it's heavy? Chu Ho blushed and said, I don't think it's heavy. I don't usually eat much, so I'm not considered fat. It's heavy. Gu Jinglian said, I'm carrying the whole world. Do you think it's heavy? Chu Ho widened her eyes in surprise. It was normal for couples to speak sweet nothings. However, when such affectionate words came out of the mouth of a man like Gu Jinglian, it was a little unusual. In her eyes, Gu Jinglian was a more old-fashioned man. He was obviously still very young, but he gave people a feeling that he had been through a lot. When he spoke, he always spoke in a commanding tone. He was very strict and serious. He had always been a man who did not smile. He was a man who would not even laugh when he was joking. When he joked, he was a man who did not even know how to joke. Now, he had blurted out such sweet words of love. Chu Ho really could not imagine that these words came out of Gu Jinglian's mouth. What's wrong? Gu Jinglian saw that she was stunned and did not think much of it. What's with your expression? I can't tell. Chu Ho sighed and said, you're quite good at saying sweet nothings. If you want to hear it, I'll say it to you in the future. As Gu Jinglian said this, he added, the premise is that I'm in a good mood. Wasn't that the same as not saying anything? Chu Ho asked in return, when have you ever been in a good mood? She saw that he always had a serious face, as if the whole world owed him money. She always felt that he had never been in a good mood. Of course. Gu Jinglian snorted coldly. For example, today, I'm in a good mood. This was the truth. Ever since he woke up in the morning, his mood had become very light. Even if he encountered people like the Meng family who came to pick a fight, it did not dampen his mood at all. Chu Ho's heart was shaken by something, and he trembled slightly. Today, her understanding of Gu Jinglian was about to break through the limit. She didn't expect that this man could tell cold jokes, say romantic words, and even say words that could move people. He didn't know if Uncle Fu had taught him how to say these words, or if he had thought of them himself. However, no matter what, even if he already had a draft for these words, it was already not easy for him to swallow his pride and say these words. Although she was not particular about romance, it was already very surprising to hear such words of love coming out of his mouth on such a day. Hugging the entire world, Chu-ho kept recalling this sentence in her mind. She wanted to laugh, but because he was here, she didn't dare to laugh so easily. She didn't want him to think that she was laughing at him. Hence, she secretly covered her mouth and held the apple in her hand to the side of her mouth. The corners of her lips curled up uncontrollably. The apple in her hand was given to her by Mama Fu before they left. Mama Fu said that hugging an apple in her hand would ensure the safety of the two of them for the rest of their lives. This was a moral and also a tradition. Chapter 37-31. Gu Jinglian carried him into the bridal chamber. There was already a group of people gathered at the entrance of the bridal chamber. When they saw Gu Jinglian carrying Chu-ho in, they held up colorful confetti in their hands and sprinkled them over their heads. Chu-ho buried her face in Gu Jinglian's chest. Gu Jinglian also instinctively shielded her to prevent the confetti from falling into her eyes. When the two of them entered the room, Gu Jinglian carried Chu-ho and sat her down on the bed. The bed had already been made the night before. The red embroidered bedsheet and quilt cover, as well as the white quilt on top of it, were stuffed with dates, peanuts, longans, and lotus seeds. The quilt was pieced together to form the words, "Give birth to a child soon." Chu-ho glanced at it and her face instantly turned red. She instinctively stroked her lower abdomen, thinking that this child and daughter had already been in her stomach for a long time. According to tradition, when these quilts were laid out, an underage child would be invited to crawl on them. It had a special meaning of joy. Hence, this heavy responsibility fell on Xiao Bao and Lin Shi's shoulders. At night, Uncle Fu carried Xiao Bao and Lin Shi to the bed. They rolled and crawled on the bed. Uncle Fu watched from the side and chuckled. He was extremely happy. However, Xiao Bao did not know the purpose of this. He pestered Uncle Fu and asked him why they had to crawl on the bed. Uncle Fu said, "This is a tradition. You'll know when you grow up." However, Xiao Bao was angry. It seemed like it would take a long time for him to grow up. Wouldn't he have to wait for a long time to find out? While Gu Jinglian and Chu-ho were sitting, Lin Shi walked over with a pair of red scissors and a small red bag in his hands. He walked in front of Gu Jinglian and Chu-ho, smiled shyly, and said softly, "Dad, Mom, don't move." "Yes." Chu-ho didn't know what he was going to do, but he was obedient and sat still. Lin Shi carefully cut a few strands of hair from her head. He cut them very carefully. He was worried that he would prick her skin, but he was also worried that he would mess up her hair. He cut a strand of hair and walked over to Gu Jinglian. He cut another strand of hair from his temples. Gu Jinglian's hair was naturally not as long as Chu-ho's, but it was not very short either. Lin Shi carefully twisted the two strands of hair together and gently placed them into the red fortune pouch. This meant that the two of them were officially husband and wife. Lin Shi smiled and said a few words of joy, "I wish you a happy and blissful marriage. I wish you a child soon. I wish you a happy and loving life." Chu-ho smiled, took his hand, and asked curiously, "Who taught you that?" "Uncle Fu taught me that." Initially, Uncle Fu wanted to let Xiao Bao do it, but he was worried that Xiao Bao didn't know how to use scissors and couldn't cut it well. Moreover, he couldn't recite these lines well even after repeating them a few times. "So, Uncle Fu let me do it." Pfft. Chu-ho laughed out loud. Everyone behind him also laughed kindly. Lin Shi felt very happy. In his eyes, these things were extremely sacred. However, Xiao Bao felt wronged. He couldn't recite these lines. On one hand, he wasn't good at reciting and couldn't even pronounce the words correctly. He didn't know what "have a child soon" meant. He also didn't know what "a happy and blissful marriage" meant. On the other hand, he was extremely nervous. Hence, Lin Shi snatched this spot. Chapter 37-32. Uncle Fu brought over 2 bowls of soup. There were glutinous rice balls, yuan shao, dates, and lotus hearts. The soup was sweet and meant sweetness and harmony. However, they had to feed each other a mouthful of the soup first. Gu Jinglian was naturally the first to be fed. It was his first time eating sweet soup and he didn't really like sweet things. Hence, as he fiddled with the food in the bowl, he asked, "What do you want to eat?" I'll eat glutinous rice balls." Okay. It was rare for Gu Jinglian to be so docile. The reason why he was described as docile was because Gu Jinglian had always been arrogant and unruly. He rarely took the initiative to feed others and would even ask for their opinion on what they wanted to eat. How rare. Chu Ho was naturally happy to see this and enjoyed being fed. After feeding him 2 mouthfuls, Gu Jinglian said unhappily, "This bowl is almost finished. When are you going to feed me?" Chu Ho was stunned. He hadn't swallowed the glutinous rice ball in his mouth and asked incoherently, "Huh? Do I have to feed you too? Otherwise?" Gu Jinglian raised his eyebrows. "Do you want to eat both bowls?" "I don't have that intention." "Then why aren't you feeding me?" Ah. That domineering Gu Jinglian seemed to have returned. Chu Ho didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but he immediately swallowed the glutinous rice ball in his mouth and scooped another glutinous rice ball to bring to his mouth. Gu Jinglian glanced at it, but his gaze was cold as if he didn't care about it. He didn't like glutinous rice balls. Chu Ho raised his eyebrows strangely and fed him another glutinous rice ball. Gu Jinglian still didn't open his mouth. Chu Ho couldn't sit still anymore and asked impatiently, "What do you want to eat?" Gu Jinglian smiled wickedly and leaned closer to her. He said slowly, "I want to eat what you feed me with your mouth." "You." Chu Ho's face immediately turned red. Even though Gu Jinglian deliberately lowered his voice, Uncle Fu, who was beside him, heard him. He raised his head and said to the people in the room, "Mr. Gu wants to eat the bride," so he fed her with her mouth. Bride, please satisfy the groom and feed him with your mouth." Exactly. The cameraman also walked over with his camera and pointed it at them. He smiled and said, "Bride, don't be too shy. Use your mouth to feed the groom. It's a good opportunity for me to capture this scene." Chu Ho pursed her lips reluctantly. Gu Jinglian was obviously trying to prank her. Gu Jinglian, on the other hand, looked at her calmly and did not rush her. It was only when she slowly held the spoon that he said, "I want to eat glutinous rice balls." Tang Yuan was so soft and sticky. It was really not easy to bite it off. This man must be doing it on purpose. However, Chu Ho couldn't flare up in front of so many people. She could only take a bite of the glutinous rice ball. Gu Jinglian's face came closer. His thin lips opened slightly and he bit the glutinous rice ball in her mouth. The soft glutinous rice ball was squashed. It was sticky, soft, and sticky with the sticky sweet soup and the rich sesame core. Chu Ho bit the glutinous rice ball and didn't move. Gu Jinglian, on the other hand, was more active. He bit the glutinous rice ball and gently sucked the soup that was about to escape from the corner of his mouth. The tip of his tongue gently stroked and finally bit the soft glutinous rice ball into 2 pieces. The sticky glutinous rice ball skin pulled white threads between their lips and teeth. Chapter 37-33. Gu Jinglian bit into the glutinous rice ball and smiled mischievously. He then hugged the back of Chu Ho's neck and kissed her, slowly wiping away the leftover soup on her lips. Of course, other than Uncle Fu, the guests and others who were crowded in the room to watch were tortured by this bowl of public display of affection. After finishing the 2 bowls of sweet soup, Uncle Fu urged Chu Ho to touch up her makeup while Gu Jinglian went to the door to welcome the guests. Gu Jinglian actually did not want to welcome the guests as he felt quite uncomfortable standing at the door. However, Uncle Fu insisted that this was a tradition, so how could they not follow it? Hence, Gu Jinglian and a few groomsmen stood at the entrance of the Gu residence and braced themselves to welcome the guests. Not long after, Chu Ho came over and happened to meet Meng Qingxue and Mu Yancheng. Meng Qingxue saw Chu Ho standing at the door in a fiery red dragon and phoenix gown, looking especially dazzling. She exclaimed as she walked over and held Chu Ho's hand. She exclaimed, "Chu Ho, you're so beautiful today. You're probably the most beautiful bride I've ever seen. Chu Ho smiled. Thank you. She saw that Meng Qingxue had only brought Mu Yanqing with her. Mu Yanqing was wearing a suit and it was obvious that he had dressed up meticulously. His hair was also combed very handsomely. Mu Yanqing smiled at her and said, "Congratulations." Mu Yanqing did not dare to look Gu Jinglian in the eye. However, Gu Jinglian said in a rare amiable manner, "Welcome." Chu Ho asked, "Why don't I see the little guy?" "The little guy caught a cold a while ago. Otherwise, I would definitely bring him over." Meng Qingxue continued, "Chu Ho, congratulations. I wish you a blissful marriage and a child soon." "Okay, thank you." After saying that, Meng Qingxue held Mu Yanqing's arm and stepped through the door. Uncle Fu led the way. Mu Yanqing also passed the monetary gift he had prepared in advance to Uncle Fu. Uncle Fu happily accepted it. It was packed in a large red envelope. Uncle Fu was very experienced. With just a touch, he knew that there was 100,000 yuan inside. Mu Yanqing was even more generous with 100,000 yuan. Actually, Meng Qingxue and Chu Ho did not interact much. They kept in touch through phone calls and text messages, but Chu Ho had taken care of Meng Qingxue in the past, so Mu Yanqing was naturally grateful to him. Hence, this monetary gift had to be presentable, and it was also for her sake. Gu Jinglian and Chu Ho stood at the entrance to welcome the guests. They stood there for an hour. Not long after, 2 Bentleys stopped at the entrance. Gu Jinglian glanced at them and saw that it was Mu Yazhe and Yun Shishir who got out of the car. Yun Shishir carried Yue Yao from the back seat. The driver of the car behind opened the door for Yu Yu, Xiao Yichen, and Lisa to alight. It was a family of six people in a grandiose manner. Gu Jinglian's expression changed when he saw this. Mu Yazhe was the most ostentatious and had attracted the most people. Gu Jinglian's gaze fell on Lisa. Seeing that she was also here, he guessed that Lisa must have settled down at the Mu residence. However, compared to Meng Qingxue and Mu Yanqing's amiability, when Mu Yazhe led the family of 6 to him, Gu Jinglian saw Yu Yu's arrogant expression. Clearly, he was disdainful of him. Gu Jinglian's eyes turned slightly cold. This fellow, he had not even settled the score with him for the North Africa incident, yet he was already showing such an infuriating expression. Chapter 37-34. Yu Yu had an arrogant look on his face, as if attending Gu Jinglian's wedding was beneath him. Everyone was silent. Gu Jinglian almost blurted out, "Get lost." Fortunately, Uncle Fu was good at reading people's expressions. He quickly stopped him and muttered softly, "Old master, it's a big day. Don't get angry." Mu Yazhe tried not to laugh. His son was too arrogant. Even if it was Gu Jinglian, he didn't intend to show him much respect. He was too fierce. Yun Shishir didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Chu Ho couldn't help but burst out laughing. Xiao Yichen, on the other hand, tugged at Yu Yu's sleeve nervously. "Hey, Yu Yu, at least say, congratulations." After all, Gu Jinglian was his and Lisa's savior. Hence, Xiao Yichen had a good impression of Gu Jinglian. However, Yu Yu didn't like Gu Jinglian and looked at him with contempt. Gu Jinglian didn't get along with him either. The two of them, one adult and one child, looked at each other with great hostility. Yun Shishir quickly stepped forward and said to Gu Jinglian and Chu Ho, "Jinglian, Chu Ho, congratulations. Congratulations on your marriage and may you live a long and happy life together." Gu Jinglian snorted, but his expression didn't look too bad. Obviously, Yun Shishir's timely consolation had more or less calmed his anger. Chu Ho couldn't help but say, "This little guy is too cute." He was practically made from the same mold as Gu Jinglian. Why were their temperaments so similar? They were arrogant, aloof, and looked down on everyone. One was a big devil and the other was a little devil. No wonder they didn't get along. Yun Shishir was also somewhat helpless. How would she know that there was a conflict between Yu Yu and Gu Jinglian? When they were in North Africa, the two of them had a huge conflict. You caused Gu Jinglian to lose a piece of land, and you obviously did not take the arrogant Gu Jinglian seriously. It was only natural that the two of them would not get along. Mu Yaja stepped forward and said to Gu Jinglian, "Congratulations on your marriage. This is just a small gift from me. I hope you'll accept it." He handed over a red packet. The red packet was long and big, but it was very flat. Gu Jinglian immediately knew that this red packet must be very valuable. Mu Yaja couldn't have stuffed $100 bill into the bag. It must have been a large check. "Uncle Fu." Gu Jinglian greeted him. Uncle Fu immediately walked over and took the red packet from Mu Yaja. He smiled and bowed. "President Mu, Mrs. Mu, this way please." "Okay." Mu Yaja nodded. He held on to Yun Shishir's arm and the six of them stepped into the Mu residence under Uncle Fu's lead. Chu Ho saw that they had entered the residence and there was no one at the door. She bent down and gently massaged the sore muscles in her calves. She was wearing high heels, but she didn't usually wear high heels. In addition, she was standing at the door motionlessly in high heels. Her calf muscles were tense, and it was inevitable that she would feel a little sore. When Auntie Chin saw this, she immediately said, "High heels must be uncomfortable, right?" Chu Ho nodded. "Yeah, it's against my feet. My toes hurt too." "Okay, wait for me for a while. I'll get you a pair of flats." Auntie Fu asked, "Do you have flats with red flats?" "Yes, but they're cloth shoes. They're also red, so it's okay to wear them. Chu Ho is pregnant. She can't wear high heels all the time. It's not good for her health." "Yeah, you're right. Hurry up and change them." Chapter 37-35. This was because it was a traditional Chinese wedding. Therefore, there was also a ceremony to worship heaven and earth. After all the guests had arrived, Gu Jinglian and Chu Ho followed the tradition and worshipped heaven and earth. Then, the ceremony was considered complete. It was the first time that Chu Ho had experienced such a traditional wedding. She found it very novel. However, this wedding had a special meaning to Gu Jinglian. He had never thought that he would marry and have children in this life. Even more so, he had never thought that his wife would be Chu Ho. She was once an Interpol officer, and he was a name on the Interpol blacklist. Two names that would never have crossed each other's paths in their lives were now linked together. On this day, Gu Jinglian appeared to be very happy. Together with Uncle Fu, he did not refuse any of the guests' toasts and drank some wine. When everyone cheered for him to kiss the bride, Gu Jinglian did not pull a long face. Instead, he generously put his arm around Chu Ho's waist and gently kissed her red lips. No matter what, he refused to do it. Chu Ho also felt that with Gu Jinglian's style, he would definitely not show off his love in front of everyone. Such an ascetic man would definitely be a different person in private. However, in front of so many people, he would definitely not let them off too easily. Some people cheered and urged them to disturb the bridal chamber. Gu Jinglian's expression immediately darkened. Although he did not say anything, his attitude was clear. If they dared to disturb the bridal chamber, they would try it. Of course, everyone was just talking. If they really wanted to disturb Gu Jinglian's bridal chamber, they would not dare to do it even if they had 10 times the courage. After the banquet, the guests left one by one. At night, Gu Jinglian dealt with all the situations. When he entered the room, Chu Ho was sitting on the big bed in a bright red wedding dress. She was holding 2 dolls in her arms. These 2 dolls were handmade by Uncle Fu and were placed on the bed. One was a girl doll, and the other was a boy doll. It meant that they had both a son and a daughter. The girl held the word Bai Nian in her hands, while the boy held the word Hao Feng in his arms. When put together, it meant Hao Feng. In addition, Chu Ho was carrying a pair of twins, a boy and a girl. This pair of babies was especially suitable for the occasion. When Chu Ho saw it, he couldn't bear to part with it and kept holding it in his arms. Meng Qingxue was also there. She held Xiao Bao in her arms and chatted with her. When she saw Gu Jinglian, she stood up with a smile and said, "Ah, the groom is here. It's time for me to leave and not disturb your wedding night." Xiao Bao was originally reluctant to leave, but Meng Qingxue quietly whispered a few words into his ear. When Xiao Bao heard this, he instantly beamed with joy and obediently followed her. After the two of them left, Meng Qingxue did not forget to close the door. Gu Jinglian turned around and looked at Chu Ho. For some reason, she could still act gracefully in front of the guests. Now that there was no one else in the room except for them, He seemed a little uneasy. "Have the guests all left?" Gu Jinglian hummed in acknowledgement and walked over to sit beside her. He was wearing a suit. Because it was a Chinese wedding, the suit had Chinese elements. There was gold embroidery on the collar and sleeves. The buttons were also carved with dragons and phoenixes. Under the lights, the whole room was a sea of red. Chapter 37-36. Red curtains, red window panes, red sheets and quilts, even her body was covered in a bright red color, giving her an ancient charm. Chu Ho nervously intertwined her hands together. For a moment, she did not know what to say. Gu Jinglian tugged at his tie slightly. Perhaps it was because he had drunk alcohol, but his body was a little warm. This feeling, this scene, this wedding night. The ancients said that every moment of the night was worth 1,000 gold. However, if it were them, Gu Jinglian would probably suffer a little. She was now pregnant with a pair of twins. Because it was still early pregnancy, it was best to avoid sex as much as possible. Uncle Fu had also repeatedly reminded Gu Jinglian that they could not do it on the wedding night, lest it affected the babies. Gu Jinglian was naturally very cautious about the children. Therefore, even if he was in such an environment, it made him have some thoughts about her. However, because of the two little guys in her stomach, no matter how many thoughts he had, he could only ruthlessly strangle them to extinction. Chu Ho saw that his breathing was a little heavy, but she did not know that it was because he had drunk alcohol. She thought that he was suppressing it, so she said with a red face, "Mother Blessing said that when you're pregnant, you should avoid sex as much as possible. I'm afraid you can't do that today." She said it more ambiguously. When Gu Jinglian heard this, he turned his face and looked at her deeply, but he asked knowingly, "Which one?" She played dumb. "Which one are you talking about?" Chu Ho said a little angrily, "Why are you still asking when you know?" "I don't know." Gu Jinglian's ability to play dumb was not much worse than hers. "If you don't say it, how would I know?" At this moment, his gaze fell on her face. His handsome eyes were so deep and ambiguous that it was so rich that it was about to overflow. Chu Ho only felt her face burning under his stare. "Gu Jinglian. Don't ask when you know the answer." Gu Jinglian, however, brushed it off completely. "I really don't know." Chu Ho snorted disapprovingly. He turned his face away awkwardly and said, "It means that we can't have sex." Gu Jinglian said, "Oh," but the last syllable was dragged out. He suddenly moved closer and pinched her chin, forcing her to face him. "From your tone, it sounds like you're very regretful." Chu Ho's face instantly turned red. "What do you mean I'm sorry?" Gu Jinglian smiled. When he smiled, the corners of his lips curved into a faint arc. It was extremely charming. He was obviously making fun of her. Literally. "I know you understand." Chu Ho smiled and said, "I wonder who's the regretful one. On the wedding night, you can only hug each other and can't consummate your marriage. You should be the one suffering more." "Who said that I can only hug each other?" Gu Jinglian suddenly leaned over and pressed his body weight onto hers. However, Gu Jinglian was especially careful. Although he was leaning on her, he did not press all of his weight on her. She couldn't bear the sudden weight and was pinned down by him. Looking up, Chu Ho met Gu Jinglian's deep eyes. It was as if there was magic in his eyes. It was like an endless abyss that wanted to hook her soul into it. Chu Ho was pinned down and couldn't move. She twisted around uncomfortably. Chapter 37-37. Gu Jinglian immediately said, "Shh, don't talk." Chu Ho was a little puzzled. She did not understand what he was trying to do. Although she was pinned under his body, Gu Jinglian's arms held on tightly. Although he was suppressing her, he did not put all his weight on her body. Gu Jinglian looked at her like this. His rare gentle gaze swept across her face inch by inch. In his mind, it was like a revolving lantern. Memories appeared one after another. From the first time they met, she stood in front of him, arrogant and respectful. She was as cold as a machine, as if there was no emotion or warmth. At that time, Gu Jinglian could tell that this woman was not an ordinary person. Later, he slowly realized that she was an undercover agent sent by Interpol. She lurked around him in order to collect evidence and take action. However, he was not in a hurry to expose her. He had given her a chance. If she had given up her identity as an undercover agent, he would definitely not have killed her. Logically speaking, such a woman betrayed and deceived him. Given his personality, he would definitely kill her. However, he did not know why he felt compassion. However, Chu Ho did not give up her duty as an Interpol agent. Hence, he made a move. At that time, he was cold and decisive. He did not leave any way out. However, he did not expect that she did not die and was even pregnant. It was his child. Their reunion 5 years later was unexpected, but also expected. He did not expect that their child was already 5 years old. His name was Xiao Bao. When Gu Jinglian heard this name, he did not know whether to laugh or cry. This name sounded a little old-fashioned. However, he had already gotten used to calling her by that name. Later, Chu Ho came to North Africa to look for him. She braved the rain of bullets and came to him alone in such a dangerous war zone. Gu Jinglian did not expect her to come. When he saw her, he was still a little puzzled. He thought that if he died in North Africa, Chu Ho would definitely feel relieved and leave the Gu family with Xiao Bao. He did not expect that she would come to North Africa to look for him. Along the way from North Africa, the two of them had experienced life-and-death situations and passed through many difficulties and obstacles. At that time, when they boarded the ship back to the capital, Gu Jinglian had already decided on her. He had set his mind on this woman. Gu Jinglian looked at her fixedly. Chu Ho asked him uneasily, "What's wrong? You keep staring at me." However, in the next second, Gu Jinglian's thin lips gently covered hers. He gently pried open her soft lips and drove straight in. This was the first time in his life that he had taken the initiative to kiss her so gently. At first, Chu Ho was frozen by such a sudden kiss and did not dare to move. However, she gradually got used to this kind of kiss and knew how to respond to him slowly. When they kissed, the chemistry between the two of them was unparalleled. Feeling her response, Gu Jinglian kissed her even more deeply. He took her hand and guided her to hug him. Chu Ho smiled, closed her eyes, and hugged his shoulders obediently. The kiss deepened. Gu Jinglian turned around and pulled her onto his body. He hugged the back of her neck. A few strands of Chu Ho's black hair suddenly fell and covered his eyes. The room was brightly lit. Chapter 37-38. After they got married, they did not have the time to be sweet. Moreover, with Gu Jinglian's personality, even if he wanted to be sweet, he would not be able to be sweet. Therefore, she naturally entered a difficult pregnancy. During the early stages of pregnancy, Chu Ho began to have pregnancy symptoms. In fact, her physical fitness was considered good, so the pregnancy symptoms were not very serious. Other than feeling nauseous every morning and not being able to see greasy things, the most strange thing was that, like most pregnant women, she had an inexplicable preference for sour and sweet things. Uncle Fu bought some sour plums and candied plums and put them on the bedside table. When Chu Ho was hungry, she would take 1 or 2 of them out to eat. This was because she did not know if she could eat more of these sour plums. She heard that if she ate too much sweet food during pregnancy, it was easy to get diabetes. Therefore, she did not dare to eat too much sweet things. When she was hungry, she would eat a few to satisfy her cravings. After that, she would not eat more. However, Xiao Bao and Lin Shi would sometimes sneak into her room to look for some snacks. They did not know why Uncle Fu prepared so many candied plums and sour plums. They thought that Chu Ho had hidden the snacks and did not want to let them eat them. Therefore, they would steal a can every time. When Uncle Fu saw this, he also guessed who the culprit was. However, he just smiled and pretended not to know. He replenished the stock again. When Chu Ho's pregnancy symptoms were at their worst, she did not eat much for 2 whole days. It was not that she did not eat. Chu Ho's tolerance was amazing. Even if the food was not to her appetite and she felt nauseous when she saw it, she endured it and ate it. However, before she could digest it, she vomited it all out. Sometimes, he would even vomit out bile. After a week, she had lost a lot of weight. It was really not easy to be pregnant. This was Gu Jinglian's only sigh. In addition, she was pregnant with 2 little guys. Therefore, her belly looked obviously bigger than other pregnant women's. Other pregnant women's bellies were more than 4 months old, but she was already so big at 3 months. However, even though he was pregnant, Chu Ho still insisted on exercising. When he woke up in the morning, after washing his face and brushing his teeth, he insisted on taking a walk in the backyard. After eating, he walked around as much as he could. In the evening, Gu Jinglian came back. He never took a walk, but ever since Chu Ho got pregnant, he became patient and insisted on holding her hand to take a walk. Gradually, the number of people taking a stroll increased. Uncle Fu would also tag along. Mama Qin was worried that Chu Ho would feel unwell and vomit halfway through the stroll, so she also tagged along eagerly. Xiao Bao and Lin Shi were also worried, so every time after dinner, the group would take a stroll in the back garden. Although Chu Ho's pregnancy was not serious, it lasted for a long time. During that time, she could not eat anything. Uncle Fu and Mama Qin went back and forth on the food. It could be said that they had deliberately and racked their brains. They even specially hired a nutritionist to come back and customize a special diet for her. In the end, Chu Ho did not have an appetite. Other than porridge, she would vomit everything that had a little oil on it. It was better not to eat it. Otherwise, she would not be able to withstand vomiting like this every day. Chapter 37-39. At the very least, Chu Ho would not have any extreme reactions after eating these. However, what surprised Mother Qin the most was that even after she was pregnant, Chu Ho's mood remained very good. It was said that during pregnancy, especially in the middle, pregnant women would often lose control of their emotions and become very irritable. Sometimes, they would lose their temper for no reason. However, Chu Ho would not. His mood was so stable that it made one's hair stand on end. He still looked calm and composed, no different from usual. On the other hand, Gu Jinglian's temper changed a lot. In front of Chu Ho, no matter how bad his mood was, he would not show any negative emotions. However, when it came to other people, his temper was worse than before. Especially every time Chu Ho vomited everything he had just eaten, he would find Mother Qin and vent his anger, blaming her for not preparing the food well. As a result, Gu Jinglian was especially irritable when he saw Chu Ho suffer. He had never been good at expressing his feelings in front of Chu Ho. Everyone could tell that he was just worried about Chu Ho. Chu Ho once found out about it and felt very apologetic. Whether he vomited or not really had much to do with the food Mother Qin prepared. He instinctively rejected it, even if it was just a little bit of greasy meat. Perhaps he would feel better after this period of time. Chu Ho looked for Mother Qin guiltily and apologized to her. However, Mother Qin laughed. I was wondering what was going on. You even specially looked for me. Sigh, it's nothing. Old Master's temper is much better than before. In the past, he always had a bad temper. Did he get angry often? It would be better if he got angry often. At least, he wouldn't keep it to himself. It would be easier to talk about it. Mother Qin mentioned some of Gu Jinglian's past. In the past, Gu Jinglian was ruthless in dealing with people. For example, in the past, when a servant accidentally broke a vase, Gu Jinglian would immediately chase the servant out of the Gu family. If it were now, he might show his displeasure with a look of displeasure, but at most, he would give the servant a verbal warning. He was no longer so ruthless and did not give the servant any leeway. Moreover, the fact that master scolded me like that only means that he knows how to dote on people. Think about it, he blames me because you always vomit after eating my food. He feels sorry for you, so he can only vent his anger on me. I'm old, and he's still young. How can I argue with him? As Aunt Qin spoke, she laughed to herself. Chu Ho was helpless. You guys have spoiled him since he was young. That's why he's so spoiled. If it were me, his temper wouldn't be so bad. Master's heart is not bad. Everyone outside says that he is very bad, and his reputation is extremely vicious. However, as long as you put your heart into it, you'll find that master is actually very gentle inside. Aunt Qin sighed again. You say that we spoil him, but we also feel sorry for him. Master has been alone since he was young. He has no one close to him. We watched him grow up. But think about it, no one is perfect. How can there be a perfect person in this world? Other than old master being a little arrogant and bad-tempered, there isn't anything bad about him. That was true. No one was perfect. No one was perfect in this world. Gu Jinglian was not a god. He was just a mortal. Even a god was not perfect, let alone a human. Chapter 3740. Besides, master's temper has been restrained a lot now. Look, no matter what troubles he has in business, he rarely brings these emotions home. You've been pregnant for so long, but he's never been angry with anyone else, let alone you. Even in front of you, he's never been angry with anyone else. People change for the sake of their loved ones. Even though you might not realize it, as bystanders, we can see it very clearly. Although master's change is subtle, we can still sense it. Chu Ho nodded. She had also noticed that Gu Jinglian's temper had been restrained a lot. He did not know how to take care of people, but after being pregnant for so long, he might not have done well in the things that he did not know how to do, but he did what he could. For example, when she was not feeling well at night, because her stomach was a little big and her back hurt from lying down, even if he was so sleepy that he could not open his eyes, he would use his hands to rub her sore waist. Sometimes, she would want to eat in the middle of the night. Gu Jinglian would even drive all the way to a 24-hour convenience store to buy some freshly cut fruits, biscuits, and bread. When he returned, she was usually already asleep. He would put these food by the bedside. When she woke up hungry again, she could reach out and get it. Chu Ho also saw it. The changes that Gu Jinglian had made for her were unimaginable. The short yet long period of early pregnancy seemed to have passed quietly in the wee hours of the morning. One day, Chu Ho woke up and a strong sense of hunger surrounded her. She shook Gu Jinglian awake and said that she wanted to eat drumsticks. Other than drumsticks, she wanted to eat rice and pork rib soup. She felt so hungry that she could swallow a cow. For some reason, this hunger was so fierce that as soon as she woke up, her appetite was great and she wanted to eat and drink. However, Gu Jinglian was a little cautious. Ever since she started having pregnancy symptoms, she couldn't touch these oily things. Now, she suddenly said that she wanted to eat chicken drumsticks and pork rib soup. However, even though he was a little worried, Gu Jinglian still got out of bed and woke Uncle Fu up so that he could take care of it. Uncle Fu was also a good cook. He didn't wake Mama Qin up and cooked a pot of pork ribs and radish soup, braised chicken legs, and a pot of rice. The group of people sat at the dining table and were on tenterhooks. They were sweating profusely until Chu Ho finished a bowl of rice, 2 drumsticks, and a few ribs. His mouth was glistening with oil. She was so hungry that she couldn't care less about her manners. She was so focused on eating that the rice grains stuck to the corners of her mouth. Gu Jinglian's heart ached when he saw her eating in such a hurry. He knew that she was too hungry. Perhaps it was hard for ordinary people to understand this kind of hunger. She was so hungry that her whole body was trembling. It was as if she would faint in the next second. After breakfast, Chu-ho went back to her room and lay down. Gu Jinglian didn't dare to sleep. He was worried that she would feel nauseous again and vomit everything that she had eaten. Everyone was on high alert, but they did not expect Chu-hee to sleep for the entire morning and only wake up at noon. At noon, Mama Chin made another pot of braised pork. Chu-ho got up and sat down to eat again. However, because she wasn't that hungry anymore, she didn't eat in a hurry. For the whole afternoon, Chu-ho didn't show any signs of vomiting. Chapter 37:41. In the end, even though everyone was on guard for the whole afternoon, Chu-ho still showed no signs of vomiting. Uncle Fu cheered. It was probably because the pregnancy period had passed. This time, they didn't have to worry about oil anymore. At night, when Gu Jinglian came back, the whole family sat around the dining table. Gu Jinglian gave her a few pieces of red braised pork and urged her to eat a few pieces of meat. After eating, she didn't show any signs of nausea. Mother Chin said happily, "Chu-ho, don't you feel uncomfortable anymore?" "Yes, I don't." Chu-ho said with a smile, "I won't vomit anymore." "Wow!" Mother Chin beamed with joy. She and Uncle Fu looked at each other and were very gratified. "It's good that you don't vomit anymore. You can finally nourish your body." Uncle Fu said with heartache, "You haven't been able to eat much oil recently, and the whole family has been nervous. You haven't seen old master. He hasn't slept well for a few days, and he's worried that you're not feeling well." Gu Jinglian cleared his throat and looked at him warningly, blaming him for talking too much. Uncle Fu smiled. "Old master is shy. He's worried about his wife, and he won't let others talk about it." "Uncle Fu." Gu Jinglian warned again, and Uncle Fu was so scared that he kept quiet. Chu-ho covered her mouth and laughed. "All right, stop threatening Uncle Fu," Chu-ho said. Then she said to Uncle Fu, "Uncle Fu, I've made you and Mother Chin worry for a while. I don't know what happened, but in just one night, when I woke up, I really wanted to eat some oil and meat. I was craving it. After eating drumsticks and ribs, I didn't feel sick or sick. It's really amazing. At that time, when I was pregnant, it was the same. This pregnancy reaction came and went quickly. It came and went quickly. It came and went as I wished. It was gone just like that. This means that your pregnancy reaction has subsided." Chu-hee nodded as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders. The pregnancy reaction was too torturous. She didn't know how to get through this period of time. It was too torturous. She also felt tormented, and so did everyone else. Fortunately, it was already over. After the pregnancy symptoms passed, Auntie Chin and Uncle Fu were busy adjusting her body. Due to her pregnancy symptoms, she had been eating and vomiting, and she had lost a lot of weight. Hence, Mama Chin stewed an old hen and fed it to Chu-ho with chicken soup for 3 days in a row, hoping that Chu-ho would be able to replenish the nutrients that she had lost previously. Chu-ho didn't really like soup, so Uncle Fu coaxed her, "The nutrients of an old hen are all in the soup. Eating chicken can't compare to drinking this soup. Besides, you have to think about it. This chicken soup isn't for you to drink. You have to think about it. You're pregnant with 2 little guys. If you don't want to, then don't treat them unfairly." When Uncle Fu said this, Chu-ho understood. For the sake of the 2 little guys in her stomach who were waiting to be fed, Chu-ho drank the soup no matter how much she didn't like it. There weren't many ingredients in the chicken soup. It was the original flavor. Although it was light, it was also naturally delicious. Other than the chicken soup and rib soup, Uncle Fu also paid attention to the nutritional balance. According to the nutritionist's formula, Chu-ho gained some weight after half a month. Everyone was happy. This meant that the nutritious meals made sense. In half a month, she had more or less gained weight. However, Chu-ho was a little worried. Chapter 3742. Uncle Fu, if you keep feeding me like this, I'll definitely become a pig. Uncle Fu was amused when he heard this. Why? Are you worried that old master will despise you if you become a pig? Chu Ho laughed and said, if I really become a pig, I'll despise myself, let alone him. No, why would old master despise you? Chu Ho snorted and said, I don't want to eat until I'm fat. Don't feed me so much in the future. However, even though he said that, he still continued to eat. She still ate and slept as usual. Chu He felt that she was almost no different from a pig. She ate and slept. She did not have to worry about anything. Gradually, when she was more than 5 months pregnant, Chu Ho's belly became bigger and bigger. Usually, a 5-month pregnant woman's belly wouldn't be very big, but Chu Ho's belly had become round and bulging. Usually, when he was at home, he didn't notice it. However, when Gu Jinglian accompanied him to the prenatal checkup, the contrast was immediately reflected when he compared it with other 5-month pregnant women. Chu Ho even wondered if his belly had become so big from eating too much, or if there were other reasons. The doctor said that other people only had 1 child, but he had 2. Naturally, his belly was bigger than other people's. However, this was too big. Because he was more than 5 months pregnant, Mother Qin was worried that Chu Ho's hair was too long and he was eating too much nutrition. Hence, she suggested to Gu Jinglian that they take Chu Ho to have his hair trimmed and cut. However, Gu Jinglian wasn't very willing to do so. He couldn't understand how his hair could be nourished. However, Mother Qin said that his hair was very nutritious, especially the ends of Chu Ho's hair. They were actually a little split, which meant that the nutrients couldn't keep up with such long hair. Seeing that Gu Jinglian was unwilling, Mother Qin persuaded him again and again. She said that his hair could grow again if he cut it. With that said, Gu Jinglian reluctantly agreed. However, Gu Jinglian could not bear to cut too much hair. The scissors reached his ears, so Gu Jinglian could not bear to cut his hair. He stood at the side and stared at the scissors in the barber's hand. His burning gaze made the barber feel as if the scissors in his hand were about to melt. It was so hot. Even though Uncle Fu was standing by the side, desperately hinting at the hairdresser to cut it a little shorter, the hairdresser could only laugh bitterly and did not dare to cut it anymore. Only then did Uncle Fu notice Gu Jinglian's cold gaze. When he understood what was going on, he did not know whether to laugh or cry. He scolded in his heart, Master is already such an adult, why is he acting like a child at this time? After cutting her hair, Chu Ho stood up and looked at herself in the mirror. She used to have short hair, but after she got together with Gu Jinglian, she stopped cutting her hair. Now that she had cut her hair short, she was not used to it. How is it? Chu Ho turned to look at Gu Jinglian and mumbled, I'm not used to my short hair. Gu Jinglian snorted unhappily. He was not used to it even more than she was. Seeing his unhappy expression, Chu Ho suddenly reached out and patted his head. Alright, don't be angry. When we unload the goods, I'll let my hair grow a little longer. Unload the goods. Gu Jinglian did not understand what this term was. Chu Ho and Uncle Fu looked at each other and smiled. Unload the goods was a term used in the maternity circle. It meant to give birth. Chapter 3743. She didn't use WeChat much, but ever since she got pregnant, she had been bored out of her mind. She started fumbling with her phone and entered a WeChat group for expectant mothers in the same city. It was filled with pregnant women or women who had just given birth. Some of them were lying in the waiting room, chatting on WeChat about how they felt about waiting for labor. For example, how painful the contractions were, and how they had only opened 3 fingers in one night. Some of them wanted to give birth naturally, but they couldn't, so they had to resort to C-sections. There were all kinds of people in the world. At first, Chu Ho thought it was interesting. With the intention of learning from it, she also spoke enthusiastically in the group. Later, she realized that this WeChat group was more like a tree hole. Many expectant mothers complained and sought comfort in it. Chu Ho's deepest impression was of a pregnant woman who was 7 months pregnant crying in the WeChat group. Because she couldn't have sex during pregnancy, her husband asked her to do some outrageous things, but she was unwilling. Later, when she was 7 months pregnant, she accidentally found out that her husband was having an affair. She was in despair and pain. Her voice resonated with the other pregnant women. Actually, it wasn't completely true that one couldn't have sex during pregnancy. At least, except for the first 3 months and the last 3 months, as long as it wasn't intense, it was okay to have sex during the middle. However, most expectant mothers were protective of their children and refused to have sex no matter what. There were many conflicts between husband and wife. Some husbands couldn't tolerate it at all, so they had women outside and even went to ask for sex. Many people couldn't accept this fact, but they didn't know how to face it. Most of them just turned a blind eye. What else can I do? My stomach is so big and I'm going to give birth soon. Do I have to divorce him while I'm pregnant? If we get divorced, the child will belong to me. I can't afford it. If the child belongs to him, I won't accept it. I have nothing left. The house and car are premarital assets. I won't get a single cent. As long as it's not too much and they don't come knocking on my door, I can only tolerate it. There's no choice. After being pregnant for so long, no man can tolerate it. That's right. Men are all animals who think with their lower bodies. Can they really tolerate it for more than 10 months? After giving birth, they still have to go through confinement. After that, there's a long breastfeeding period. They'll be busy taking care of the child and their married life will definitely be unhappy. After this period of time, it'll be fine. As long as it's not too much. However, Chu-ho disagreed and said, if a man cheats, it's absolutely unforgivable. It doesn't matter if they have other women outside or if they have short-lived relationships with other women, they are all betrayals and can never be forgiven. After the first time, if they are forgiven, there will be a second time, a third time, and countless times because they will realize that they don't need to pay any price for such a mistake. However, no one acknowledged her words. However, many people did not say anything. A pregnant woman did not know that her husband had cheated on her. She was a little resentful and said to Chu-ho, all men in the world are the same. I have to advise you to be more careful. Your husband is fine in front of you, but who knows what he is like behind your back? How many women do you have outside? How far along are you? Looking at your note, you've been pregnant for more than 5 months. A normal man wouldn't be able to hold himself back. Chapter 37:44. He'll accompany me for dinner and walks. I don't have to be careful. I trust him. Without a comparison, Chu-ho would not have realized how gentle and responsible Gu Jinglian was. Every day, other than work matters, he would spend most of his time around her, fearing that he would overlook her. In the WeChat group, there was too much negativity. Many of them were stay-at-home wives who did not have jobs and relied on their husbands for most of their lives. During her pregnancy, her husband did not want to be lonely and had an affair. Many people were angry but did not dare to say anything. Even if they knew, the most they would do was cry and throw a tantrum. Some men with a conscience would often admit their mistakes and say that there would not be a next time. This was to give her a way out. If they were pushed too hard, the man would say, then let's get a divorce. Many people would be at a loss and would not know what to do. It was as if they did not know what to do if they left the man. That woman was aggressive. Ha! You trust him. Before this happened to my man, I also trusted him. I did not suspect that he would go out and find another woman. But it has happened. I don't want to believe it, but I have to accept the reality. Men are all like this. If you don't know, it's good that he hid it, but it doesn't mean that it didn't happen. It didn't happen, but it doesn't mean that it won't happen. Just wait and see. Can your man endure 5 months? Can he endure 10 months? Can he endure 10 months? Can he endure your confinement and breastfeeding period? Don't think too highly of men. Men are like that. Her last sentence was full of contempt. Chu-ho laughed. You were betrayed by your husband. Look, all the women in the world are as miserable as you. But you don't have to impose your misfortune on me to make your husband look so dignified. My husband is a responsible man. You don't have to smear his reputation. How confident are you? That woman laughed. Your man must be very ugly. Otherwise, why can't he even find another woman? Seeing that the atmosphere was getting tense, the others said nervously, don't be like this. Everyone should be friendly. Don't make things unpleasant. Since this has happened, let's think of a way to deal with it. Don't quarrel. Exactly. Chu-ho stopped talking and threw his phone aside. He was full of anger. She was not angry because the man had cheated on her, but because these women condoned the betrayal. If it were her, she would not be able to tolerate such betrayal. She even wondered if Gu Jinglian would get tired of this marriage one day and fall in love with another woman. If that was really the case, she would not try to save him. When he had a change of heart, he was already not loyal to his marriage. She couldn't accept a little bit of infidelity. Be it his body or mind, he could not tolerate even the slightest bit of betrayal. Similarly, she would not betray him. Even if a man better than him appeared one day, she would never betray him. Since she had chosen him and had bowed to the heavens and earth during the wedding, she had made a promise. She had to be faithful to her promise and stay by his side for the rest of her life. This was Chu-ho's understanding of marriage. Apart from natural disasters and man-made disasters, life and death, there was nothing that could separate them. Then, did Gu Jinglian think the same? Chapter 37:45. Chu-ho put her phone aside and ignored the WeChat messages. However, a few people in the WeChat group had formed a new group. One of the pregnant women who had a conflict with Chu-ho just now was unhappy with Chu-ho and started to make a scene in the group. Who was the one who pulled Chu-ho into the group? How can there be such a naive woman in this world? Men are not good people. It's not that I want to overturn everyone, but this is the problem. How many men these days are really responsible? The people in the group started chatting as well. I admit that there are men who don't cheat on their wives. However, we are pregnant and have to do some teaching at home. In the end, when men come home, they are either lying on the sofa or lying on the bed. They are just like masters. At this point, she opened the floodgates of resentment. Most of the pregnant women who joined the group did not have a harmonious family life. After complaining about their disappointing husbands, one of them sent a disdainful emoji. That Chu-ho just wants to show off how much her husband loves her, how well he treats her, and how much he dotes on her. She just wants to feel superior. I don't think so. Her husband must be very ugly. I have seen men who are obedient to their wives. They are either very ugly or very honest. I have seen many rich people and rich second-generation heirs. Which one of them doesn't have a red flag at home and a red flag outside? At this moment, the pregnant woman who had pulled Chu-ho into the group spoke. I was the one who pulled Chu-ho into the group. At that time, we met during a prenatal checkup. My mother-in-law accompanied me for a prenatal checkup. Chu-ho seemed to be accompanied by her husband. Her husband accompanied her for a prenatal checkup. The group of people was shocked. It was not that it was strange for a husband to accompany Chu-ho for a prenatal checkup, but that person had exaggerated and described how Gu Jinglian protected Chu-ho and how considerate he was. Many people felt that it was unfair. Then her husband must be very ugly. Exactly. How can there be such a handsome and gentle husband who is so considerate of his wife? He's simply the best of the best. It's hard to come by in 100 years. Why did she have to meet him? That person said meekly, I've seen Chu-ho's husband before. It's unforgettable. He's even more handsome than a celebrity. You guys know Gu Xingze, right? At the mention of Gu Xingze, everyone reacted. I know, the nation's Prince Charming, but isn't he dead? Chu-ho's husband looks quite similar to Gu Xingze. At first glance, I thought Gu Xingze wasn't dead. I even suspected that the news of Gu Xingze's death was an excuse for Gu Xingze to retire from the entertainment industry. Perhaps Gu Xingze isn't dead. He just got married and wanted to retire from the entertainment industry to return to his family. He was afraid that his fans wouldn't be able to accept it and would jump off a building to commit suicide. That's why he staged it himself. That's impossible. At that time, the media reported that they saw Gu Xingze with their own eyes at the memorial service. He's really dead. It's true. That's strange. How similar do they look? He's a little more handsome than Gu Xingze. Also, when he accompanied Chu Ho for a prenatal checkup, there was a butler with them. I heard Chu Ho call him Uncle Fu, and that Uncle Fu called him Master Gu. Chapter 3746. His surname is also Gu. Did you mistake son-in-law for Master Gu? Many people felt it was unfair. Are you serious? Ai me, did you see wrongly? Is Chu Ho's husband really that handsome? Yeah, I'm just jealous. My husband hasn't accompanied me for many prenatal checkups, but I think Chu Ho's husband seems to know how to take care of her. He wouldn't even let her carry a normal hospital bag. Chu Ho's belly is even bigger than mine. When I was waiting for the prenatal checkup report, I saw her husband holding her hand and walking slowly along the corridor. They didn't talk much, but I could tell that they were very close. To be honest, I was a little jealous when I saw that. I really can't compare them. It's infuriating to compare. At that time, I thought that it would be great if I were Chu Ho. I wouldn't have to work so hard to get pregnant. She sent another long paragraph. Pregnancy is really hard. I don't understand these men. They make it seem like they're working and I'm at home with a big belly, so it's so easy. I can't ask him to accompany me for a walk, but he says that I don't understand him and that it's so hard for him to earn money. Sometimes, when I'm alone, he'll lie next to me at night and play with his phone. After playing for a while, he'll fall asleep without caring about me. Sometimes, when I'm sad and cry at night, he won't change his mind. When we got married, he made it sound so nice. He said that he would love me and understand me all his life. But what happened in the end? Because I was pregnant, I quit my job and stayed at home to take care of my husband and child. Now, Dabao is going to kindergarten and I'm pregnant with another one. I still have to send Dabao to school every morning and play with him at night. I asked him to take care of the child, but he refused. I really don't understand why I married him. Now, he's raising a slut outside. I even found it in his WeChat chat history. Tell me, why did he keep the chat history? Was he deliberately showing it to me? I'd rather he be smarter and more cunning. I'd rather he delete the chat history and lie to me for the rest of his life. Now, I don't even know if I should divorce him. Get a divorce. Do you want to keep this kind of man for the new year? But if we get a divorce, he bought the house before we got married. My house has been renovated, and it's a big flat that costs hundreds of thousands. He even bought a car. If we get a divorce, I won't have a share of the house. I might not even be able to get custody of the children. Even if I get custody, I might not be able to afford to raise them. You have to be careful with your divorce. Divorced women were often discriminated against. No matter how good a woman is, once she hears that it's her second marriage, her value will immediately drop. It's not fair. Just thinking about it makes me angry. At this time, someone said coldly, you see others living a glamorous life, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they are truly happy. Just like on the surface, aren't you in love with your husband? How can others see the resentment and grievances you've suffered in private? Chu Ho's life might be worse than yours. She even had a strong sense of justice, saying that her husband would never cheat on her. I think she doesn't even know that I cheated on her. Chapter 3747. A group of pregnant women became like a group of resentful women because of some trivial matters in their lives. Isn't there a gathering soon? At that time, we can meet Chu Ho's husband. I want to see who he is. Chu Ho had no idea that a few pregnant women had started a small group and were talking about her. When Gu Jinglian returned home, she was sitting on the sofa and learning how to knit a scarf from Mother Qin. The weather was getting cold. She thought that since she was pregnant and had nothing to do, the whole family would take care of her properly. Hence, she wanted to learn how to knit. Knitting a scarf was a beginner level and was very simple. Hence, she planned to knit a scarf for Gu Jinglian, Xiao Bao, and Lin Shi each. It was a good opportunity to practice. Hence, she asked Mother Qin for help. Mother Qin naturally taught her everything without holding back. When Gu Jinglian returned home, Chu Ho was sitting on the sofa and knitting a scarf. She had already started the needle and was knitting several rows. Gu Jinglian was stunned. He could not associate a good wife and loving mother like knitting a scarf with Chu Ho. "What are you doing?" When Chu Ho heard this, she looked up. She was so focused on knitting the scarf that she did not realize that he was back. "You're back." Chu Ho smiled. "It's getting cold. I want to knit a scarf for you, Xiao Bao, and Lin Shi." Gu Jinglian did not have the habit of wearing a scarf. Usually, he would get into the car directly after leaving the house. No matter where he went, the heater would be on, so there was no need for a scarf. However, if it was knitted by her, it would be a different story. Gu Jinglian was inexplicably happy, but he did not seem to care much. He casually picked up the ball of yarn and asked, "Do you know how to knit?" "Mother Qin taught me. Although it's not very difficult and the pattern is very simple, I've already gotten the hang of it." "Oh." Gu Jinglian pretended to be calm and scribbled, "Oh, I'll knit it later. Let's go downstairs for dinner." After he finished speaking, he turned around expressionlessly. However, when he turned around, the corners of his lips curled up slightly, unable to contain the smug and satisfied curve. When she went downstairs, Uncle Fu happened to be upstairs. He saw Gu Jinglian walking downstairs with a smile on his face as if he had seen a ghost. When Gu Jinglian saw his eyes widen, he immediately stopped smiling and resumed his usual cold expression. "Why are your eyes so wide open?" "Master," Uncle Fu asked tentatively. "What are you so happy about today? Why are you asking this? Look at you, the corners of your mouth are about to split open." Gu Jinglian frowned slightly and subconsciously rubbed the corner of his lips with his hand. He noticed Uncle Fu's teasing gaze and said angrily, "You're mistaken." With that, Gu Jinglian walked down the stairs seriously, not caring about his expression. Uncle Fu covered his mouth and snickered. Master's awkwardness hadn't changed at all. It was not until Uncle Fu walked into the room and saw Chu Ho that she put aside the scarves she had been knitting. He was a little surprised. "You're knitting a scarf?" "Yes." Mother Qin smiled. "This is for Master." Chu Ho picked a dark gray one. However, Chu Ho is smart and learns everything quickly. I've only taught her the first time and she's already learned it well. When Uncle Fu heard this, he could not help but laugh. No wonder Master looked so pleased with himself when he put it down and went downstairs. Chapter 37:48. What an awkward feeling. Uncle Fu muttered to himself. Chu Ho asked Uncle Fu, "Uncle Fu, do you think a dark gray one suits Jinglian?" "Yes, it suits him." "It's fine as long as you think it suits him. It can't be just me who thinks it suits him. What if he doesn't look good in it?" Chu Ho smiled and said, "He doesn't usually wear a scarf. I wonder if he'll wear it after I finish knitting it." As she said this, Chu Ho muttered to herself, "Why don't I give this scarf to Xiao Bao?" Earlier, when she saw that Gu Jinglian didn't seem interested in the scarf in her hands, she was worried that she would be upset if he didn't even look at it after she had painstakingly knitted it and left it in the wardrobe. Uncle Fu panicked and said, "You can't do that. Didn't you say that you would knit this scarf for old master? If you give it to Xiao Bao, old master will be angry." "Angry? Why?" Chu Ho was a little confused. "It's not that he doesn't like to wear scarves. That's different." Uncle Fu said, "As long as it's knitted by you, old master will definitely wear it every day. He won't throw it away even if it's torn. After a pause, he smiled again and said, Chu-ho, don't you know old master's character? He has a sharp tongue but a soft heart. Perhaps he'll verbally complain that the scarf you knitted is not pretty, but he'll actually be happy on the inside. However, old master has always been awkward. He may say that he doesn't like it, but he actually likes it very much. It's just that he doesn't want to lose face and say it directly. Really? Chu-ho smiled when she heard this, but she didn't quite understand. I don't understand what's so awkward about him. If he likes it, he likes it. If he doesn't like it, he doesn't like it. Can't he be a little more open about it? Men are different from women. Ha, old master's character is like suffering because he wants to lose face. All right. Chu-ho shook his head, looked at the scarf in his hand, and said, I'll probably finish this scarf in a few days. By then, the weather will be cold, and he will be able to wear it. Yes. Uncle Fu said again, hurry up and go down for dinner. I made chicken soup for you. Don't let it get cold. Yes. After dinner, Chu-ho continued to knit for a while until her eyes were blurry. She then put the scarf aside and picked up her phone to take a look. It was a message notification. When she unlocked the screen, she saw the woman who had added her to the Mother-to-Be chat group. She asked her, Are you coming to the Mother-to-Be's social gathering next week? Where is he? Are you there? Why aren't you replying? Are you still angry about what happened this afternoon? When Chu-ho saw this, he replied, An exchange meeting for expectant mothers? What is this for? Didn't I tell you before? That person immediately replied, After all, many mother-to-be in the group feel lonely after getting pregnant, besides taking care of the fetus. Everyone happens to be from the same city, and they are all mother-to-be. Some of them are veterans, who have already given birth. It's rare for everyone to gather together to chat and share their experiences. Chu-ho was a little hesitant. I've been busy knitting scarves recently. I don't think I have time to go out. The point was, after all, they had gotten into an argument, so it was inevitable that it would be awkward to see them. Knitting scarves. For the baby? Chapter 3749. Aya, you should ask me for advice on this. I'm an expert at knitting. I know all kinds of patterns. I can teach you. I'll definitely teach you without holding anything back. Chu-ho was amused. Are you serious? I'm clumsy and won't be able to learn all this. I won't be able to learn quickly. Don't worry. I'm very patient. When the time comes and you bring all the materials over, I'll draw for you. I guarantee that you'll get the hang of it quickly. Oh. Chu-ho was a little tempted. That person continued, Actually, I know that you're probably afraid that it'll be awkward when you meet her because of the argument in the group. But it's okay. We're all moms and don't have any bad intentions. Actually, she's upset too. She's already upset. If you continue to say that, won't you be suspected of making her hate you? Chu-ho smiled and replied, I'm not angry anymore. I was just being nice and felt that it's wrong for a man to have an affair. In the end, she went overboard and argued with me. Actually, there's no need for me to say so much to her. She lives her own life and others can't tell her what to do. I'm not angry anymore. I just feel wronged. She shouldn't have been so nice. If it had been someone else, they would have thought that she was showing off. It was pointless to say anything when they didn't get along. But what she said was true. Then it's settled. That person probed, will your husband come then? Huh? Chu-ho sent a confused emoji. Why would my husband come? Aya, if your husband comes, it'll be easier for us to interact. Otherwise, it won't be appropriate to leave him alone at home when you're out. The date of the appointment happened to be a Sunday. She had thought that Gu Jinglian didn't have to go to work. In fact, although Gu Jinglian had holidays, they were not fixed. He could rest whenever he wanted, but most of the time, he didn't rest much. On Sundays, if Chu-ho didn't need a prenatal checkup and there wasn't anything important, he would still go to the office, but he would come back earlier. Chu-ho said, "My husband is a little busy. He probably won't be able to go." "Ah, let's go together." "Doesn't your husband rest on Sundays?" "He doesn't rest." "So hard." That person sent a smiling emoji. "Is your husband a salaryman? Which company do you work for?" However, Chu-ho was not willing to talk about Gu Jinglian's profession in depth, so he changed the topic and said, "I understand. I will definitely be there on that day. When the time comes, I will need you to teach me how to knit the baby's cotton-padded clothes. It's nothing. As long as you come, I will teach you well." After ending the conversation in a hurry, Chu-ho put down his phone and saw Gu Jinglian walking out of the bathroom. Looking at him, she was reminded of the conversation she had in the group earlier. For a moment, she felt a little uncomfortable. Sitting on the bed, she groaned and called out to him, "Gu Jinglian, I have a question for you." Even though they were married, she was still used to calling him that in most cases. Gu Jinglian turned around and raised his eyebrows as he wiped his wet hair. "What's wrong?" "Let me ask you a question." "Okay, go ahead." "What do you think about cheating?" "Cheating?" Gu Jinglian's eyes flashed with confusion. "Why are you asking this?" Chapter 3750. There's nothing to answer. Gu Jinglian sat on the sofa and pursed his lips. "What's there to cheat on? If you don't like her, you can just break up. Since you've already broken up with someone else, there's no cheating, right? Then, what if you cheat on someone else when you're still together?" Gu Jinglian smiled. "I don't understand. Why are you still thinking about someone else when you're still together?" Chu-ho hesitated. "Maybe your feelings for her have faded. You don't like her anymore?" Gu Jinglian replied bluntly, "If you don't like being apart, then so be it." "Then, what if you still like her?" "It was just a moment of impulse." "If you still like her, there's no reason to cheat on her. You're already an adult. Don't use impulse as an excuse for everything." Gu Jinglian paused and his gaze suddenly became dangerous. He stared at her meaningfully. "Why are you suddenly asking this? Are you going to cheat?" "Pfft." Chu-ho snorted coldly. "Of course not. Is there a need for me to cheat? Besides, I'm pregnant. How can I cheat on her? I'm more like a condom." "A condom? How dare you?" Gu Jinglian looked even more nervous. "What's the matter? Why are you suddenly asking this? I feel like you have something on your mind. I heard that some men, when their wives are pregnant, can't have sex. Once they have a physical need, they'll go outside and find other women to satisfy themselves." Chu-ho paused and said, "Will you have a situation where you can't hold it in?" Gu Jinglian's mood was a little gloomy when he mentioned this. "What can I do if I can't hold it in?" Gu Jinglian said meaningfully, "Someone won't understand me either." Ahem. Chu-ho looked away awkwardly. "But don't worry. I can hold it in." Chu-ho suddenly asked, "Will you forgive me for cheating on you?" Gu Jinglian was stunned. Seeing that Chu-ho seemed to be very persistent about this question, he answered seriously, "Everyone has a bottom line. It depends on what the bottom line is. For me, my answer is no. I'll never forgive a man who betrays me. No matter who he is, I'll treat him equally. You're my wife, and you have to be loyal to me. Similarly, I'm your husband, so I have to be responsible for you too. Being loyal to you is my bottom line." Chu-ho's eyes immediately. "Are you serious?" "Of course." Gu Jinglian didn't think so. "Do you think I'm joking? Since I'm married to you, I'm not divorced. I'm only widowed." Chu-he felt an inexplicable chill in her heart and asked half-jokingly, "If I cheat on you, will you strangle me to death?" "Yes, I will choke you to death first, then choke that adulterer to death." "How?" "Be it no that." Gu Jinglian snorted. So, be good and don't betray me. I won't strangle you to death. What about you? Chu He suddenly asked with interest, what will you do if you betray me? What will I do? First of all, without this assumption, I can't. Chu Ho didn't believe her. You're that confident? I'm married. Chapter 3751. Chu Ho smiled. She knew what kind of man Gu Jinglian was. Although he had an awkward personality, he never bothered to say hypocritical sweet words. That was because he was a very strong man. Therefore, he did not need to say hypocritical words to win the favor of others. It had always been others pleasing him. He had never spent any effort to please others. Therefore, what he said was 100% from the bottom of his heart. He could not forgive her betrayal. Similarly, he would not betray her. Marriage was his choice, so he had to be loyal to his choice. Rather than saying that he was loyal to her, it was more accurate to say that he was loyal to his own decision. If he really did not like her, then he would divorce her and start the next relationship. When his wife was pregnant, Gu Jinglian scoffed at him for finding another woman because he could not tolerate not having sex with her. If a man could not even control his most primitive desires, what was the difference between him and a low-level primitive creature? The reason why humans were called high-level creatures was that they were smart and knew how to control their 7 emotions and 6 desires. If they could not even control it for more than 10 months, to him, they were like low-level creatures who had not completely evolved. He believed that men were more capable than women. They had strong physiques, tall figures, and extraordinary courage. Why couldn't men do things that even women could do? Gu Jinglian was initially a little suspicious as to why Chu Ho would ask such a question. However, Chu Ho did not intend to hide it from him. Do you still remember the pregnant woman I met during the prenatal checkup? Yes, I remember. Later, she pulled me into a group of expectant mothers. It was full of expectant mothers. I thought that since we were all pregnant women, we would definitely be able to learn from each other's experience. After a pause, Chu Ho told him the whole story again. Gu Jinglian did not take it to heart when he heard it. After all, that was other women's business. Their husbands had cheated. What did it have to do with him? He could not be bothered to ask. Furthermore, things like cheating and betrayal were actually very rare and common. He was not interested in understanding what those pregnant women thought of him. Chu Ho repeated her words verbatim. She also said that my husband must be very ugly. Otherwise, how could you resist me when I was pregnant for so long? She said that you would definitely not betray me. What happened to you? Gu Jinglian asked. Compared to other people's opinions, he cared more about her opinion and feelings toward him. He didn't care about the others. Chu Ho said, my husband definitely wouldn't cheat on me, because even if he did, he wouldn't be able to find someone as beautiful as me. Gu Jinglian, where's your face? Shameless. Where does your confidence come from? Gu Jinglian snorted coldly. There aren't many who are prettier than you, but there are many who are more feminine, flirtatious, and romantic than you. There are many men who are gentler than you. Chu Ho continued, there are many men who are more handsome than you. Who are they? Tell me about them. I think that Yun Shishir's husband, Mu Yaja, is very handsome. Gu Jinglian, however, was disdainful. He sneered fiercely, how can he compare to me? Why can't he compare to you? Isn't he very handsome? I think he's more manly than you. Gu Jinglian. Chapter 3752. Chu Ho was referring to his manliness, probably referring to his facial features. Gu Jinglian's facial features were more feminine. He was handsome, but his facial features were more exquisite than a woman's. Especially the mole at the corner of his eye, it made his eyes look even more devilish. Don't compare him to me. Gu Jinglian said expressionlessly, he doesn't deserve to be compared to me, But, to be honest, Chu Ho asked curiously, if a man doesn't do it for a long time, will he really not be able to hold it in? It's true that I feel uncomfortable, but I can't help it. Gu Jinglian said slowly, after all, not every man has my willpower. Oh. Chu Ho teased, have you really never done it yourself? You seem to know a lot about this. Chu Ho pretended to downplay it. In fact, she did know a little about this. When she was serving in the mercenary team, whenever she went on a mission with a group of men, many mercenaries would go to the red light district to get drunk after the mission was over. It was unavoidable. There was a period of time when they were camping in Africa because of a mission. When she lay down in a tent, the mercenaries thought that she was asleep, so they started to talk about dirty things. Only then did she know that men would sometimes solve it with their hands. Everyone had their biological needs, regardless of whether they were men or women. However, for people in their profession, they did not have the opportunity to fall in love. Therefore, to solve their biological needs, most of them just had to find a woman to do it for them. They each had their own needs. At first, she felt that this kind of thing was quite despicable. However, after thinking about it, it was just wishful thinking. It was just a normal biological need. Gu Jinglian said, don't think about those messy things. Let's sleep early. Okay. The two of them went to bed early. The day before the gathering, Chu Ho finished wrapping up one of her scarves. When she put the scarf on Gu Jinglian, a certain man was standing in front of the mirror. The dark gray scarf matched his black clothes very well. Gu Jinglian fiddled with the scarf. The main reason was that he was never used to wearing a scarf. He only wore it because she knitted it. However, the furry thing around his neck was a little uncomfortable. However, that didn't stop him from liking the scarf. However, no matter how much he liked it in his heart, no matter how much he loved it, his face remained indifferent as if he didn't care much about it. He even said in disdain, this scarf is a little too long. It's not long. Don't you think it looks more elegant if it's a little longer? Gu Jinglian said, you seem to know how to match clothes. Chu Ho blushed. In fact, the thing she paid the least attention to was dressing up. Usually, when she went out, she would just dress casually. Sometimes, Uncle Fu couldn't stand it and would personally match her clothes. What? You don't like it? It's all right. You look like you're forcing it. Chu Ho clearly knew that he was being arrogant, but she still pretended to be sulky and reached out to untie his scarf. If you don't like it, give it back to me. I'll put it on Xiao Bao. What are you doing? Gu Jinglian instinctively protected the scarf and pushed her hand away. He asked angrily, didn't you knit this for me? She had knitted it for him. Why should she give it to that brat? Chapter 37:53. She was just trying to provoke him. She wanted him to admit that he liked the scarf. Gu Jinglian turned his face away. His large hands gripped the scarf tightly as he pursed his thin lips and did not say a word. Chu Ho even walked in front of him, only to see Gu Jinglian looking out of the window disdainfully with an expression that said, this is mine. She snickered in her heart but pretended to play it down to provoke him. If you don't like it, I won't force you to wear it, right? Why don't you give it to Xiao Bao? Xiao Bao will definitely like it very much. As long as it's knitted by me, he'll still like it no matter how ugly it is. Gu Jinglian frowned but did not say a word. He looked like a child who was throwing a tantrum. For him. Yeah. Xiao Bao has been looking forward to seeing what kind of scarf I knit for him. This will save me the time to knit another one. Gu Jinglian pursed his lips unhappily. No way. This is mine. Every word he said sounded like a childish child. Chu Ho was laughing in her heart. Oh my God. How did she just realize that this man had such an adorable side to him? He obviously acted like he didn't like it very much and was disdainful of it. Since he didn't like it, his hands were protecting the scarf so tightly. It was like a child protecting his beloved toy. Do you like it then? Chu Ho asked again. Gu Jinglian's gaze returned to the mirror. His handsome face was gloomy, but he still pretended to be nonchalant and said, although it's not very nice, I'll wear it since you knitted it for me. He seemed to emphasize that, You knitted it for me, as if it was her greatest honor that he was willing to wear it. He was giving her face. Chu-ho was even more disdainful. Listen carefully. I'm asking you if you like it, not if you're willing to wear it. Why was he so awkward? She really wanted to rub his face. Gu Jinglian grunted and said vaguely, "It's all right." Chu-ho reached out to snatch the scarf from his neck. "Forget it, I won't force you." "Not allowed." "Give it back." "No." Gu Jinglian put on the scarf and ran away. Chu-ho, who was pregnant, chased after him. However, she was pregnant. How could she outrun Gu Jinglian? The two of them were fighting in the corridor. Chu-ho was furious. Gu Jinglian saw that she couldn't catch up with him, so he retreated and snorted provocatively. "This is mine. You gave it to me. How can you take it back?" Chu-ho was so angry that he was panting. Suddenly, pain flashed across his face. He clutched his stomach and squatted down with a pained expression. He let out a painful groan. When Gu Jinglian saw this, he immediately rushed over anxiously. He held her shoulders and asked anxiously, "What's wrong? What's going on? Was she about to give birth?" That was impossible. How long had she been pregnant? There was still a long way to go before her due date. Chu-ho stammered, You made me angry." "How did I make you angry?" "Ouch." Chu-ho simply collapsed in his arms and clutched her stomach, looking like she was in great pain. Gu Jinglian was even more helpless. She muttered, "Do you really not like my scarf at all? I knitted it for a long time and put a lot of effort into it." "I like it." Gu Jinglian blurted out without thinking, "I like it." "Really?" Chapter 3754. Yeah, I really do like it. It was rare for Tsunderagu to put down his pride and admit it himself. "I like the one you knitted. I'll wear it all the time. I'll wear it to sleep at night. No matter how hot the summer is, I won't be able to take it off." Pfft. Chu-ho finally couldn't take it anymore. She couldn't keep up the act anymore. With a pfft sound, she laughed out loud and quickly kissed him on the lips. "All right. I'm just teasing you." Gu Jinglian widened his eyes in shock. His fingertips touched his lips, which seemed to still be warm from her kiss. He looked down at Chu-ho again, only to see that she didn't seem to be in pain at all. Instead, she was looking at him with a smile. He realized that she had been deliberately mystifying him just now. Gu Jinglian was a little unhappy. "Are you kidding me? Why? Can't I?" Seeing his angry expression, Chu-ho deliberately provoked him. "Bite me." When Gu Jinglian heard this, he was so angry that he lowered his head and bit her lips. However, the bite wasn't heavy. Instead, it felt like he was acting coquettishly. Earlier, he was really scared out of his wits. He thought that something had happened to her. He was so scared that his face almost turned white. "You're not allowed to joke about such things in the future." He would be worried. He would really be worried. When Chu-ho heard this, her heart felt as sweet as honey. However, she said stubbornly, "I know. But can you not be so duplicitous in the future? If you like me, you like me. Why won't you admit it?" Gu Jinglian hummed in acknowledgement, but his face was strangely red. Chu-ho pinched his handsome face. "Did you hear that? You're not allowed to be duplicitous." "I know." He snorted in annoyance, which meant that he had agreed. "Then let me ask you again. Do you like this scarf?" "I like it." Then, Chu-ho asked tentatively, "Will you wear it all the time?" "Of course. I said before that I won't take it off in the summer." Chu-ho was stunned. "Really? You won't take it off in the summer? If you have the ability to say it, then you have to do it. I've never seen anyone wearing a scarf in the summer and refusing to take it off. You should at least let me see the world." Gu Jinglian was furious. Just now, in order to coax her, he even said this. However, with his character, how could he go back on his words? If he wore it, then so be it. At most, he would get a heatstroke. Chu-ho laughed and couldn't bear to tease him anymore. Alright, I'm just joking with you. As she spoke, she was about to stand up. However, halfway through, her body froze. She frowned, leaned against the wall, and took a difficult step forward. Gu Jinglian thought that she was trying to be mysterious again, so he asked in annoyance, "What's wrong?" Chu-ho smiled flatteringly. "Yes, my legs are numb from squatting for too long." "How troublesome," Gu Jinglian muttered. He walked over, carried her in his arms and carried her back to the room. Behind them, Uncle Fu was hiding in a corner and secretly watching. Just now, when he passed by, he heard Chu-ho's pained voice and thought that something had happened. When he got closer, he realized that they were flirting, so he hid in a corner and watched. He sighed in his heart, love can really change a person. Old Master had indeed changed a lot for Chu-ho. At least, in the past, Old Master wouldn't have chatted and laughed with such a woman. Looking at his awkward expression and the way he was so nervous about Chu-ho, he knew how to place a person in his heart. Chapter 3755. After Chu-ho knitted the scarf for Gu Jinglian put it on before the weather turned cold. Everyone in the Gu family was surprised when he put on the scarf. It was only autumn and the weather had just turned cold. Gu Jinglian put on a thick scarf, shocking many people. Until Xiao Bao saw it. Thus, Xiao Bao started arguing with Chu-ho. "Why does Daddy have a scarf but I don't?" "Mommy, didn't you say that you were going to knit a scarf for me?" Xiao Bao was a little angry. He had thought that Chu-ho's first scarf was for him, but when he saw Gu Jinglian put it on, he was very jealous. Chu-ho comforted him, "Don't you have a few scarves?" "But I want to wear the one that Mommy knit for me." Xiao Bao said coquettishly, "If Mommy knits a scarf for me, Xiao Bao will wear it every day. Even if it's hot in summer, I won't take it off." Chu-ho was speechless. They were indeed biological children. Both father and son's answers were the same. Chu-ho coaxed, "Okay. I promise to knit a hat for you, okay?" Xiao Bao nodded when he heard this. "Okay. I like a green one. It's best if it's lake green. Even the color of an apple will do." "Green. Wait." Chu-ho's eyelids twitched. "A green hat? Yeah, what's wrong?" Xiao Bao obviously didn't understand the deeper meaning of a green hat, so he said, "Actually, it's fine if it's not green. A blue one looks good too. I like green and blue." Chu-ho didn't know whether to laugh or cry, so he said, "Then I'll knit a blue hat for you." "Okay." In the evening, Chu-ho held back her laughter and told Gu Jinglian about how Xiao Bao had pestered her to knit a green hat for him in the afternoon. Gu Jinglian's face turned ashen when he heard this. "Cuckold. Xiao Bao likes green, didn't you know?" Chu-ho continued, "He especially likes green, blue, and purple. But how can this hat be made in green? He doesn't understand the origin of this." Gu Jinglian was disgusted. Why was his son so stupid? It was hard to imagine that this was Gu Jinglian's son. It must be fake. "Does this blue look good?" Chu-ho began to pick a ball of wool, hesitating between the lake blue and bluish gray. Gu Jinglian said, "Lake blue looks better. It suits him." "Yes." Chu-ho picked the color and started to needle. Recently, she seemed to have become more and more addicted to knitting. She had ordered several books on knitting from the bookstore and was learning the ropes every day. She was enjoying it. Gu Jinglian leaned against the headboard and watched as she knitted back and forth. After training with the scarf, she was now much more adept at knitting. She was considered smarter, so she learned everything faster. Other than her low EQ, she was very enlightened in other aspects. Gu Jinglian snorted coldly and reminded her, "It's late. Time to sleep. There are still a few more needles. I'll be done soon." Gu Jinglian didn't allow her to explain. He took the needles from her hands and placed them on the bedside table. He hugged her and comforted her. You're not allowed to knit anymore. Okay. Since he had already said so, she could only obediently let him cover her with the blanket and turn off the lights. Gu Jinglian hugged her and said, "Good night." Good night. Chapter 3756. On the day of the party, Chuho had completely forgotten about this matter. It was not until he called to ask where she was that she remembered this matter. Chuho packed the wool and steel needles and was ready to go out. Gu Jinglian happened to be at home. He was a little surprised to see her suddenly preparing to go out when she was knitting a hat. "Where are you going?" "Oh, I'm going to a friend's party." "A friend's party?" Gu Jinglian looked at her suspiciously. "You have friends?" Of course I have friends." "Oh." Gu Jinglian pretended not to care and asked, "Male or female friends?" "They're both women." Chu Ho said again, "Why? Are you checking on me?" "I'm just asking." Gu Jinglian snorted awkwardly. "You're not going to bring me?" "They're all female friends." "Why should I bring you?" Chu Ho smiled. "Don't tell me you're worried about me." Gu Jinglian smiled. "Ha, who would have thought that the former top anti-mafia inspector of Interpol, a heroine among women, would actually attend a women's party like an ordinary woman?" Chu Ho said unhappily, "What do you mean? Can't I attend? Can't I be like a woman?" "Sure." Gu Jinglian raised his eyebrows. "I'll send you there." "No need. I'll just ask Uncle Fu to send me a car." Gu Jinglian was a little angry when he heard this. He was kind enough to send her there, but she did not appreciate it. "I'm worried that you're pregnant and there's no one to take care of you. It's inconvenient." "Stupid woman, you don't appreciate it." Chu Ho frowned. Although she was used to this guy's awkward personality, she still felt a little uncomfortable. "Since you want to send me there so much, don't be so awkward. If you don't want to send me there, then stay at home obediently and don't follow me." After Chu Ho finished speaking, he strode away. When Gu Jinglian heard this, he was momentarily embarrassed. However, he was still worried that she would go to a gathering alone with her pregnant belly, so he shamelessly followed her. Chu Ho glanced at him from the corner of his eye and smiled helplessly. She had to admit that this man was like a child in some ways. He was too childish. However, seeing that he still followed her shamelessly, she turned around and made a few rules. "You can come with me, but you can't enter the private room." "Why?" "There are so many women. It's not good for a man like you to go, right?" "What's wrong with that?" "In short, if you can't agree, then don't send me there." Gu Jinglian was afraid of her. "Okay, I'll stay in another room." "Yes." Gu Jinglian drove her to the self-service coffee shop. This self-service coffee shop was one of the more commoner places in the city. The party was split evenly. Chu Ho had already used WeChat to transfer the fees to them. When they arrived at the self-service coffee shop, Gu Jinglian went to park the car. Chu Ho entered the shop first and gave the number of the private room, but was stopped by the waiter. "Pay the bill first." "Ah. Those friends didn't pay for me." "No, there were a total of 10 people in the private room. They only paid 400 yuan. They didn't pay for you." 40 yuan per person." "Thank you." Chu Ho was a little embarrassed. How could it be? Why didn't they pay for her? Didn't they say that they would book the heads first? She did not bring money. "Can I pay on WeChat?"